Hello.
Hello! Hey!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to D&D Play 20. I am Brianna, or Vagabunda, or today I am the Keeper DM. However, you know me, but welcome to our Legends of Methis. For those of you who haven't been following this campaign, this is a homebrew campaign in a homebrew world of mine, and where we have these three fantastic players wow. with their crazy characters doing shenanigans. And from time to time, I do a bigger recap. So I do. Which will probably happen today again. So stay tuned for that. But before that, who are we? Who is D&D Play 20? Well, we are
Who is D&D Play 20?
Who is
What is D&D Play 20? Why is D&D Play 20?
No, we are a really amazing community of really nice folks who just like to play D&D and tabletop RPGs in general. And if you want to be a part of this amazing community, feel free to join our Discord for all the latest, any games that might be coming up and you can participate in, or any even just chat and people who are really supportive. So join us and let's have fun. But tonight, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves and their character, and the recap is going to be done by me today because we're going to do a general recap again. So let's do this.
Sure, roll for it. We'll just whoever wants to go first.
Whoever wants to go first can go for it. Please tell me that we're not muted.
Peter, are we muted?
No. Hello?
We're
He was
good.
just like, what?
My mouth was full.
Oh, right. So I guess we'll go with Jonathan first because he loves going first. Oh.
See, those.
I'm just talking about.
Just say, your name, who you're playing,
right.
What class you're playing, what
I am
subclass.
Jonathan. I am playing Lorcan, who is a rune knight, which is quite interesting, a fighter. And he's having a very fun time just going things, smacking things with his warhammer.
And what is he?
He's a
Brass.
brass dragonborn.
You always get messed up on that.
I always struggle.
All right, we'll move on to Nix.
Goes, hi, I'm Peter, and I play. I'm Raza. I play Nick's Bossy Boots Reach Fellow, and that's basically what she does. She has to put on those bossy boots to get things done, otherwise, things just get out of control. And even then, she gets dragged into it. Please stand by as she tries to keep this rowdy bunch together and find a cure for certain elements at the same time on this fantastic journey.
Indeed. Peter, are you okay? Or is your mouth still full?
My mouth is always full. I got a big tongue.
Huh?
Short as one.
No.
I don't know. I don't have a response.
Welcome to your channel, everybody. But we're still trying to avoid too much information. Peter, who are you playing?
Give me one moment here. I'm looking at something. First off, why do dogs run and sit in circles? Because it's hard to run in squares. And that gets my dad joke out of the way for the evening. So, I am Peter. Actually, I'm Billy Bob Joe Brown Jr., and I'm here to tell you I'm not playing tonight, but Peter is, and he's going to be playing the dying, barely alive Cinder, who is a fearbolg with a deadly disease. And he is also a divine sorcerer, everybody.
Right. And I, as the DM, also, I've realized that I have never really introduced him. There's an NPC currently accompanying the party that obviously is played by the DM. Who is Lorcan, brother from another mother, a brass dragonborn. That is a barbarian. Is a homebrew subclass of barbarian. A dragon ancestry barbarian. And
He's not very good.
that's what Lorcan says. He saved their asses a few times. So
Nexus.
Nexus.
Has it?
But he also is infected by the same condition as Cinder, though reacting in a very different way. So that is part of what their mission at the moment is. And with that, I will do a general recap of what has happened so far. Yes.
I forgot to say what Nyx was, apart from Bossy Boots.
Oh,
Out of this rock gnome halfling hybrid. Yay.
there you go. So, Legends of Methis. Methis is a continent. As far as the players know, it's a world. And in this world, there are several countries. One of them is called the Seven Cities. It is a kingdom created by an alliance between, as the name says, 7 cities. Most people only know of 6 of them because one of them is protected by wards of magic. In one of these cities, the most scientifically advanced city in this realm, in this kingdom, Swiona. It was a city founded by the Dalkan people, and who have managed to harness the lightning into energy. And there's a very stormy area, so they have advanced many creations and are now actually testing out a new form of my brain died. 1 second. Rebooting.
Stand by. Technical issue.
Yes, technical issues. They are now testing out a new form of currency. Which is gold as currency. Used to be, and it's very common all over Methis, is gems. They use gems to trade because gems are a currency, as they say, of the gods in this world. The years are named after crystals. They are very important. In Swiona, however, this group of people arrived about 2 weeks before the end of the year celebration, which is very big all over Methis. And as one of the events celebrating this occasion, there was a narrator doing a show of lights and lightning and magic to tell an ancient story. And all of our players had arrived at the city to investigate different things, to explore different things, all for different reasons. And they all came across this in the main square of the city and watched this presentation. While it happened, the lightning that was being used for the display hit each and one of them and teleported them into a different dimension.
Yeah, that was fun.
There, they were very different creatures to their real life, but they all recognized the same energy in each other, and they fought. They fought for saving their own world, and they didn't even know what world was that. As they returned back to their bodies at the end of the fight, they heard the rest of the story the narrator told, which was very different from what they had just experienced. Later on, they would learn that the narrator was the god of the seed himself, a famous god of Methis for wandering about and trying to save lives through lies. Not really knowing how to put meaning to it, the 4 found each other in the main square as it's as the crowd dissipated, and they all found that they had been left with a message, a riddle that led them to a labyrinth, an abandoned labyrinth in the city, where after going through many more riddles and finding some kobolds, they realized that there had been a mechanical contraption created by the god Delin, who had once rested at that place, but whose somebody had gone there before them and taken it. Not thinking too much about it and finding it a dead end, the party returned to the center of the city, but coming across a group of dark elves. These grayish elves that none of them had seen before. None of them had seen before, seemed to be quite how do you call it? Words are really bad for me today. Wow.
Guidance.
Guidance, yeah. They seem to be very when you're against somebody, very
Confrontational.
confrontational is a word, not the one I was looking for, but I'll take it. And they raided the party, taken any items that they were interested in, and just left them to their own devices, but guided them to a tavern nearby that apparently belonged to them. The party was not really in the mood to fight them, so they kind of followed their advice. And they met the lovely tavern keeper, Asa, the dog woman, that ran the tavern, as well as Grora, the bard that used to provide entertainment for it. They stayed there for a few days as well, learning a little bit about each other and what was happening with everyone. We knew that Cinder clearly had a medical condition that was worrisome. And he didn't spare the party any details about how he was slowly dying and only kept alive by the benefit of his goddess, Kura, the goddess of healing. Lorcan also said that he had been looking for his best friend who'd been missing. After Nyx was very quiet about her purpose at first, so as they established priorities, they decided to go talk to these dark elves who perhaps knew more than they were letting on. They were offered, Lorcan was then met with Grora and her friend, the dark elf lady, and was offered a deal. He would be given information about the whereabouts of his friend, as well as some money if he went into the Delin Foundation and participated in the clinical trials, the medical trials they had ongoing. The party thought this was a great opportunity to not only visit the Delin Foundation, which is an incredible museum of art and science, but also to understand maybe perhaps a little bit better about Cinder's condition.
Yeah, it was very sus.
And they went at the Delin Foundation. They realized a few things. One of them was that Cinder did have the condition they were investigating. Soon after they had come in and looked around for a little bit, one of the staff came and took him, very flustered, came and took him away, saying that he had escaped their quarantine area, sending alarms through. Well, Cinder played along.
Yeah.
Let them take me to the center of it all. As he got there, he released his fellow patients that he didn't really he thought it were way worse than he was, and then disguised himself as a doctor and had a look around. In the meantime, Nyx and Lorcan and their friend Adela had been looking around, and Lorcan signed up for the clinical trials. They took him as well towards where Cinder had been exploring. Nyx had no way of following them, neither had Della, so they decided to try and disguise themselves as one of the staff members they saw and make their way through. But it wasn't that easy. The Delhi Foundation had their own security system, and they were instead teleported to a room full of traps that they had to escape to get through.
Mhm.
They successfully did, and the party all reconvened inside the medical facility as red alarms were going off since all the patients had been freed. There, they found out that there were two types of reaction to this disease. This disease that was spreading somehow, nobody knew how or what was causing it. There were people like Cinder that were slowly decomposing, but there were also people like Nexus, who was found there, who were slowly turning into these scaly monstrosities.
Yes.
Finding his best friend, they obviously did not take part in the trials and try to leave as soon as they could, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. However, once again, the security system kicked in, and they ended up in a room with a tied-up demon, a Tanarok. This demon seemed to be used to retrieve blood and inject to cause the disease. So the cause of it was found there. After having to fight this room full of traps and realizing that the Tanarok was the cause of it all, and demons were at the center of this plague, they were offered by the Tanarok a deal: power and safety in exchange for his freedom. The party was not easily swayed and left the Tanarok to its fate.
We're not too stupid.
Upon reaching the upper floors and the museum part of the Dalian Foundation, they unfortunately came across the director, the head curator of the foundation, who realized something was off once Lorcan said he'd no longer wish to take part in the trials, so she decided to erase his memory. The rest of the party escaped that fate for being a little bit sneakier to get out. Once they've gotten out, they decided it was time to confront these dark elves and their involvement in this whole situation. Once they got there, they wanted to trade information. They had definitely information that Nexus had offered to give them, who, by the way, left them a note and ran away. He wanted the money for himself.
Yeah, the stupid nutter.
But things didn't exactly go according to plan. Once they got there, the Dark Elf said they already had obtained all this information and locked them in a room and attempted to kill them by raising the water level and leave them to giant crocodiles. The party was not to be this easily dismissed, as they defeated the big crocodiles, making the baby crocodile kill its own mother, and then stopping the water flow with one of Nick's mechanical contraptions and finding their way out of this room.
Little Lorcan.
Little Lorcan, indeed. Shoved into places, and don't use your teeth.
Well,
Things we learned that session. Once they left this room, they still had to contend with an entire hideout of dark elves. Cinder disguised himself as one of them and managed to explore a bit more than the others, and the others were very focused on trying to escape as alarms went through and the dark elves started chasing them.
Explore. We found a bar. That's
Well, he explored. As the party was realized that the dark elves were ambushing them by going through secret passages in the walls, Nyx was able to find one for themselves to try and escape. But that only led them to a pit of wolves, where they found an unconscious Nexus about to be devoured. They couldn't leave him behind, and they managed to rescue him from the pit.
we could leave him behind. We just didn't feel like
Cinder finally followed the party and managed to use his contact with the beasts to turn the wolves on their captors, helping them escape unscathed, but so did the wolves. Upon returning to the tavern and fleeing that dark elf hideout, they realized that the wolves were roaming around in the city and were being chased and killed. Cinder was having none of this and managed to stop and protect one of them, who turned out to be a celestial creature in disguise and working for the Council of Swiona, who had infiltrated the Dark Elf gang. Having killed the Dark Elves, however, they had destroyed any chance of the tavern to stay open. They killed their owners. So they forged some paperwork to have it passed on to their name and had to go to the city council to get their not only their citizenship, but also the paper of the tavern now in their name. Once that was all sorted, they became aware that there was a big event coming up soon. They've reopened the tavern. They had a lot of good business coming in for the New Year's, and everything seemed to be going well, especially in preparation for the biggest fight of the century. Grayson the Gargantuan, one of Lorcan and Nyx's idols, was going to fight his biggest rival, Nimblebane the Destroyer, in an underground fight that could determine who the real champion of the arena was. Well, they couldn't miss such an opportunity, could they? So, on the day of the fight, well, before that, actually, I missed something. They decided to explore and find out the tavern's competition. They walked around a little bit to see what other taverns and inns were nearby and found one called the Dark Lantern. They didn't quite get along with the owner and realized Nimblebane was being sponsored by them. That created a bit of a trouble, and they decided to eradicate the owners and friends of the tavern and explore what dark secret lived underneath it. They found out that there was some kind of aberration, a goth, some kind of beholder. They were not sticking around to find out what he did, and they left that dark well and the tavern to its own
Devices.
Then they finally had the fight. They also came across a changeling pretending to be one of the dark elves they had killed. Suspicious. They knew that person was no longer alive, and they called her out on it. She admitted it, and she actually helped them get to the embassy to learn a little bit more about who these dark elves were, as she pretended to be the princess, a nobility of the Federation of Bologna, the Elven Kingdom. They didn't learn much there, but they got approval from the mayor of Suiona to explore this further. Meantime, obviously the underground fight was getting closer and closer, and eventually they went to watch it. It was an incredible fight to the near death, and Grayson the Gargantuan won, ascending to godhood in front of countless people after 50 years without a new god being born. It was an event to witness as everybody rushed through out of the underground arena to see the pilgrimage of a newborn god, as is tradition in Methis. The party made their way out as quickly as possible, leaving Cinder slightly behind. At that point, they found out that something attacked Grayson, and they rushed to try and protect him, and realized that it seemed Nimblebane, but it really wasn't. There seemed to be two demons trying to kill the newborn god, disguised as Nimblebane and his followers. The party tried to, very easily dispatch the Tanaruk, but the other demons seemed to have a few tricks up their sleeve and managed to escape. Not before using suggestion on Cinder and Lorcan to threaten to jump off the bridge they were standing on if anybody got close to try to stop them. Lorcan ended up jumping, but there was a railing underneath that saved him, thankfully, but didn't save him from some damage. Cinder was harder to deal with, and the party had to work together to try to stop Cinder from doing anything silly. Nyx was divided between chasing down the demon on her newfound mastiff or helping her teammates. She ended up deciding to help the teammates because she realized that the mob that had just left the underground arena thought they had just killed Nimblebane in revenge of Grayson. This was unacceptable, and they started to charge towards them aggressively. So they had to think of a really quick escape plan. Everybody into the back holding, hand it off to the barbarian, let him jump off the bridge into the water. Let's hope it works. I mean, it did. Everyone got out safely.
He almost didn't know how to get us out of the bag.
He did not know how to get them out the bag. That is true. But he found a way. Now that everybody was safe, they knew they couldn't come back to Swiona that easily. They had to start making their way somewhere, but where? That's everything they had found so far was in Swiona. They still had to help Cinder and Nexus. Even more now that Cinder had been aware that his goddess had given up her powers to save somebody else, and he could no longer contact her or have her blessing. So what do they do now? They have met another god, Johann, the god of the sacred grove, one powerful cleric who had ascended to godhood, who was trying to help people protect against this plague. He warned them that certain sands were known to slow down the progression and the spread of this disease. After Nyx contacted the gods for some guidance, they decided to make their way to the wastelands, a place that nobody has really gone through. There is a constant sandstorm that nobody has ever been able to go through and come back out to tell the tale. Lorcan was, however, aware of how to get there because it is a common pilgrimage of young gladiators to make their way to the wastelands and back, not into them, but just to their border, and bring back some of the sand to prove their worth in the arena. That means they had to make their way to Carolon, the massive metropolis of the Dragonborn. Well, they didn't have a better way to get there, so on their way they went. On the way, they had a few interesting encounters, but especially one where they found a very thick fog, almost like smoke, where there were dead bodies of Dragonborn here and there. Lorcan and Nexus let the rest of the party know that it had become quite common to have ambushes on merchant trading routes, and this could have been the result of one of them. However, Larkin was not confident at all because he had a vision or a dream about this exact encounter. Among the corpses that they were passing and investigating, they realized that there was a small child that had survived the massacre. A little tiny blue dragonborn that they cared for and helped. They gave him his own massive and led him away, but tried to keep him unawares that his mother had been killed, and most of the entourage had found the same fate. As they approached the center of the massacre, where the smoke and the fires were burning, they realized there was a woman standing there who they were quick to judge on her intentions.
That was not quick to judge.
He, however, seemed to be fighting the very beings that Nexus himself is turning into.
She wasn't fighting, she was one-man army of them.
That is true. And she seemed to know a lot about what was going on. She took the time to talk to them and find out, very interesting of Nexus and of Cinder, what they knew. A lot of people apparently have been hiding a lot of information. She carried a stone where a soul of a small child was trapped. The child of two gods.
I gotta say, the way you've said that now, that's very kind of creepy.
Yeah, she did. The child was the last Genasi ever known to walk the earth, to walk the land.
Okay.
And
Breath. Breath.
And they didn't, and nobody else was really aware that Genasi had gone extinct. The child told them a lot of information, and I got distracted. Sorry. Let me backtrack a bit. The child told them everything they knew about the problems between their godparents, what is happening with the dark elves and where they come from, and as far as they know about the disease. After learning all this information, the woman herself proved to be a Kalashtar who let them know what she knew, what her plans were, And if it ever came to it, she now knew Nexus scent. And if he ever fully transformed, she would chase him down to kill him.
Yes.
She was on her way to Huya, the city of the Yuan Ti that seemed to have been the epicenter of this plague. Not sticking around to find out if she would ever turn on them, they decided to continue on the way to Linxica, the small cobble town on the way to the metropolis of Caroline. That is where we're picking it up today. God, you guys done a lot.
That was it, yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
now-
far.
Very well done. You know, she really makes us sound good, don't she?
Yeah.
We're rocking it.
You also didn't include that Cinder has tried to freeze us and turn us to stone multiple times.
Oh yes, Cinder has
The basilisk guy, I love him.
body partly decomposing. We have no need for both eyes, given that one of them keeps popping out. So he just took it out fully and replaced it with a basilisk eye, which he usually
Yeah.
keeps under an eye patch, but sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah.
And now you have a small child to contend as well.
Details.
To contend with. All right. So you were given some rations enough for 3 days, which is the rest of the way to Linxica, the
go.
next town over. Is there anything other than deciphering the texts that you guys would like to do on your way?
Not on the way.
No.
Because otherwise
When-
we'll jump to when you arrive at Linxica after doing your 3 days worth of.
Oh, okay, so so this is like a fast travel.
I was gonna do the fast travel because there's not much more for you guys to see on the way unless there's something you particularly want to do.
Nexus, that lady when she was talking to you,
Yes.
why was she talking about your auntie?
My who? My what?
Your auntie. She said your auntie. I didn't know you had an auntie.
I didn't know I had an auntie.
No. That's why. Did you not hear us say your auntie?
Does,
Yeah.
does your mother have a sister?
Not that I'm aware of, and if she did, she'd probably kill her.
It was your auntie, right?
Nick's is trying really hard.
Does your father have a sister?
I haven't seen that old man in a long time. Wisdom save. We have the first roll of the night, everybody. And it's a 9. I don't think that's enough.
Wisdom save. Maybe 10, 11, 12, 13. I'll take no.
Yeah, what does Nick explode out?
She
there?
goes, "You auntie! It's you auntie!" It's not his auntie. It's not. She keeps
What do you mean, his auntie?
You auntie. What's you auntie? Is it you auntie?
That's nice.
Yes, that is next.
twitches. She whispers,
Whatever. If it's not my auntie, I'm good. Let's go. Can you imagine if my mom had another one?
Oh God, no.
Ooh. Right.
Who's Ramon?
What? Huh?
"What? What happened?"
I said if my mom had another
Oh,
one.
I thought you said Ramon.
No, my mom. Right. We also discovered that according to Nexus and Larkin, Nexus' mom is terrifying. We'll find Come on.
Yeah, no, he's seeing his mom. And I'm going to see my parents.
Right. So, if there's nothing else on the way, next I need 1 intelligence. Yes.
Yes, I wanted. Since the demise of Little Lorcan, she wants to attempt to build a new
A new
contraption. Yes.
Sure, I'd say that you can once you resupply. Because don't forget, most of your supplies were left at the tavern.
That's true. Aside from that, just the usual elixirs.
Yeah.
I will roll for that.
We'll roll for that. You can roll for that on your own time. I just need you to do the cipher rank, which I believe you would finish if you get it right.
Oh, no pressure.
Right? You were on 5 out of 7, right? I believe it was a 5 out of 7, correct?
That's all, yeah.
So you might decipher on your before, like in the evening before your last day, you might decipher what those encrypted
So
letters
she will
guidance.
getting as it's not guidance.
Oh.
As she's getting close to the mark, she's going to not risk this. Guide my mind and my hand, and she's going to cast enhance ability
All right, advantage
to give advantage on that.
on the intelligence. Don't
Intelligence
forget,
check.
it's a DC 20 intelligence.
Ooh, DC 20. Ouch.
DC
And he
20.
has to succeed on one DC 20 intelligence every day for 7 days in a row or start over.
Reroll one.
You're gonna use the reroll.
So I get to roll plus again.
Alright.
And
Use it though. Don't forget you can only use one reroll point per roll in my game.
let me give you the reroll.
That's okay. I'll take it. That's it.
There you go. I dropped it somewhere.
Are you rolling real dice?
Yeah.
He is, yes.
He cheated!
Did you roll twice?
No, I was just saying intelligence.
Intelligence.
Check,
intelligence. Yeah.
Got it. This is a +5, 21.
21. Alright, so that passes the first day. That's 6 out of 7. The next day. The last day.
Same thing.
Yeah, I know.
You know, if you fail on this last day, I will laugh my absolute head off.
No.
No.
I succeeded already.
I would like to live.
I've got a nat 19, so there's a +5. Yeah, done.
So the encrypted letters takes after 7 long days of work on this code. She was right from the start. These were very, very important letters. So as Nix finally deciphers cracks the last bit of code, she can now read these letters. So, let's find out what Nix.
Until they change the code.
No, these letters she can decipher now.
That was just, she realizes that it goes, congratulations on deciphering up till now. You got 50 more to go.
No, you've done well. So you can now intercept any communications of the Dark Elves. You can now decipher what it says, and you also know what these are about.
Hey.
Thank God.
Are we ready
No.
to take some notes?
Oh, no. Who's taking notes? Who's taking notes?
He was like, what is this? Notes? What these notes? Huh?
I can't take notes. No.
That's okay. I forgot to mention one thing on the recap. You were also given and being told about the prophecy that is ongoing, that everybody's trying to decipher. What are you? Oh. I hope you guys the players have been trying to decipher the prophecy.
What's the date today? 19?
Where are you?
Thinking, processing.
19, yeah, 19 for you, yes.
Really?
Not really.
Processing.
We'll work on that in the game.
Processing.
Okay. So, no worries. The fact that you've deciphered the letters has some clues for you guys in there. So, the first thing that Nick picks up on the letters is that some of the letters are plans of war. They are strategizing places and where to attack from, where to recruit from, and how to get as many people of what they call batch races infected as possible, because they have a way somehow to control these creatures once they have been turned.
Oh, yay!
They are making armies of UNT brood guards and abominations and all of these affected creatures.
Yeah, I can imagine an army of ants is just gonna be bad. That
The second thing you figure out is who seems to be in charge of the kingdom of the sun. There is a tiefling that apparently these dark elves refer to. You also realize they are trying to make more dark elves by recruiting and doing missions for the serpent god that seems to be converting more and more elves to their cause, as well as gathering up tieflings for their armies.
I can't
Was it
keep
the-
up.
the
I'm
dark
copying
serpent?
y'all's notes.
That's okay. I'm explaining. Sorry?
Was it this what serpent?
The
Dark
serpent god.
Serpent god.
The serpent god is recruiting dark elves and converting the elves and converting them into dark elves, and is gathering up tieflings. The leader seems to be a tiefling royalty that survived the previous war.
I was just gonna get into clips a bit later.
The third part about this is that they talk about how they cannot seem to expand towards the wasteland as planned. The magic and the storm seems to be impenetrable even by their god.
Interesting. Not a powerful god then.
No, we don't know that.
Well,
Might just be even more powerful magic.
Christ, I bet I can throw my ball in there.
The next thing that you realize is the name of the kingdom of the sun's main city, which is, I'm looking at here on my notes,
This
and
guy is called Sol.
no,
Oh.
That would have been great.
Nilo,
Yeah.
which where's my folder?
In your folder, it'll probably be the other folder in the sack.
My yellow one? Sorry everyone, I just realized I'm missing a note and I don't see it anywhere and I'm panicking. Thank you. Right. I believe Nix, what languages do you speak?
All of them.
You do not
She's like,
speak.
Good night.
she's a cultured woman.
But what language do you speak?
All right, so let me rephrase. She's aiming to learn all languages.
Haha.
So she currently knows, obviously, Common. She knows Elvish. She knows.
You know
Nine.
Elvish,
She
perfect.
does.
So you know that Nilo in Elvish means the night's breeze.
Smart.
Seems to be quite the meaningful capital name. Finally, in some of the last letters, you find mention of the prophecy you heard just 2 days ago by this Kalashtar woman.
Gimme.
You can't trust the Kalashtar.
Yeah.
Apparently, they have been working hard to decipher the prophecy as to ensure it happens. As what they have discovered so far is that when the four great nation perishes or falls, it refers to the death of the Genasi, which were the first 4 gods of this world. But that has already occurred, so they are kind of stuck as to exact meaning of when that is.
Great.
They also think that the dark spirits that will attempt to free the seas would, if they bring about the prophecy, it would mean that the Isle of Nod protection would be unleashed, and everything that it was contained once many millennia ago would be released.
I'm guessing that's.
These two
Good.
are demons that would come out. Whether these assumptions are true or not, it is upon you guys to find out. So this is what they think. That doesn't mean it's necessarily true. When the crystal cracks, it's the one part they seem to be stuck on. They're not sure what it refers to on how it is connected, but they think it's the core of the prophecy. They need to find a way to crack the crystal to bring about the doom that they wish. They seem to think that if this happens, the tieflings and the dark elves shall rule all of Methis.
The only thing I can think of is that when the crystal cracks, it depends on how many breakfasts Nexus had in the morning.
I like that one. Take inspiration. You got it all?
Mhm.
All right. That's what Nix found out. It's a lot of information.
How are your fingers, Mr. Pianist? Mr. Typewriter. Or Mrs. Typewriting.
Shakes her head, just rubs temples again. I think one of those nights that they're traveling, she might share some of that info with them.
Sorry, say that again.
After she cracks the code and she has a drink.
Yeah, this would have been at like the end of one of your watch. So you usually take the last watch, so it's getting to morning. They're all asleep. You're cracking this code. You're finding all this out. You are at this moment by yourself,
Yeah, she'll tell them
and then
later
you
on.
can tell them
on
as
the
they
way.
wake up or on the way.
Yeah, so as she finishes, it's just to relax herself. She's going to try and brew some magical elixirs.
Okay, let's do the magical elixirs.
I drop my
And
bag.
then everyone on the way.
What was it for a second? I thought it was going to go with magical mushrooms.
She probably needs those too. With all that stuff, all that forbidden knowledge. I'm gonna roll a d6. So 2. And 2 is.
So you need to do 2 nights. It would have been 2 nights.
So the first one is a potion of swiftness.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll take note of that. And another d6. Okay. A 1 is what? Healing. Awesome.
There you go. Healing potion.
Okay.
Why do you need to buy healing potions when you're out of physical units, though?
Just magically too. Not even with a just magically. Yes.
Anything else? Oh no, it was only 2. Never mind. Okay. So, do you decide to tell them on the way to Lixica? Okay. In the morning?
When they're all waking up, had food, awake.
So when everybody's awake, Nick shares with you her findings. I would actually like to know how you're going to summarize that, so that they can know what each character would understand.
Yeah.
Did we get a long rest?
Yeah, 100%. You got 3 long rests. You're fine. 2 long rests.
Oh, I almost forgot. Aside from the elixirs and cracking the code, she's gonna be working on heating up, like try and give them.
Yeah. That's a time thing. So you're going to need more than just 4 days, but yeah.
Just start that. Heat up.
No, you can keep that up.
Okay.
As long as you mark your spell slots, you're fine.
Okay.
And by the time you get to Carolyn, you'll have 1 done. But it's when you get to Carolyn, I'll link the
Okay. Yeah, she'll start with Nexus's armor.
Yep, everybody had 2.
Wait, does he
2
wear
long
armor?
rests. Huh?
Well, he's a barbarian, does he?
He's a barbarian. He does not wear armor.
She'll start with whoever.
It's Lorcan's armor that you were starting with.
Lorcan, yeah.
And then yourself.
Yeah, it's Lorcan.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. So what does Nix let everybody else know?
Okay, so everything. So what is everyone doing right now? I assume we just finished breakfast, so she's helping pack up, and assume we're about to be on our way. She'll look to everyone to see what they're up to, and she'll go. I have important news. And she holds up the The journal.
The letters. It's like a folder with letters.
Oh, like folio. Because I managed to decipher it. And boy, it was a lot. Basically, and we can walk and talk.
It's a recipe?
For disaster, probably. Then here, there's talks of war, how they're recruiting, who they're attacking, why they're doing it, the reason why they perhaps have concocted, and she points to Cinder and Nexus's leg, that disease is so they can breed an army of, or make an army of UNT, Lord Gods, that they can control. There is mention of what we've already kind of known, that some elves are being made into dark elves by the serpent god, who is recruiting elves and tieflings to their side. They have a way of controlling them, so it's bad news.
We have a way of killing them.
And a tiny bit of hope is that despite their plans, they can't seem to make any progress advancing towards the wasteland. The magic there is proving quite durable even against their second go. They have been making progress on the prophecy that we heard the other night. The Four Great Nations part, they think it's to do with the death of the Genasi. And she kind of like, her head droops a bit as she remembers Breath, the Genasi child. They're not sure when when that is going to take into effect. It's already happened, but they're unsure how that's going to turn out. The Dark Spirits part that freed the seas was more perhaps relating to the secrets of the Isle of Knot, and perhaps when the seas are freed, that power will be unleashed. Again, they're very unsure. It's not very solid proof. They're very concerned with the part about the crystal cracking. They think that's part of the plan, that's the nut to crack for the prophecy. They seem to think that that's the key. That will be the way they gain dominion.
Did they happen to mention anything about reversing what's happening to me? That's what I'd really like to know.
Doesn't really specify, but I assume if they made it, they know how to undo it. But
I'm still gonna die. But
I'm
I'll make
working on
sure
it.
Nixus goes first.
Can I roll to see how much I actually understood of that for Lorcan?
Give me. Okay.
guidance.
Give me. It's up to you whether you would do a wisdom or an intelligence
Yeah,
check.
intelligence. Personally. No, actually.
Either wisdom or intelligence. Straight wisdom or intelligence.
Understand me.
Hey!
So fun.
You understood the gist of it. They want to conquer the world, and they're serving some serpent god, and they're up to no good.
So snakes are bad. Gotcha.
Oh, because I'm sorry, I forgot a part. There's talk of the Kingdom of the Sun, and their main city of
And there's guns
Nyla.
against them.
In the Elven tongue, the city Nyla is known as Night's Breeze.
Breezy sun.
There's talk of that there's a surviving tiefling royalty still in that kingdom. But apart from that, it doesn't specify more.
I want everybody to do me a history check.
That's a royal breezy sun.
Okay. And I guide myself.
You
Not
can
a history check.
history check for everybody.
You know, if I not play this, I'll be so surprised.
Nope, there might be reasons.
Eh,
Well, you study the war, don't you? You like the wars for its maneuvers and its
23.
tactics and.
Yes.
Ooh.
I thought it would be a nice warm country.
24,
Being all
25,
the sun.
27.
Okay, so we have 15, 18, and 27. So, Cinder, you remember, like most people, hearing about the last war. The last war was about 60 years ago that it ended. It lasted for about 20 years. And it was a war where one of the Tiefling kings went mad and decided to try to conquer many cities throughout Methis, and everything ended up being destroyed. Like it's not even there's not even the city where the Tieflings were originally from is not even it's been leveled. There's not even ruins of it. It's been completely destroyed off the face of Method.
Damn, something like that.
And the Tieflings were admonished after the war ended. Every single Tiefling that was found anywhere in outside of the Ferial was then sent to rehabilitation camps in the Ferial lands to make sure that nobody else went mad with the same way. Many of the Tieflings they were basically ostracized after the war. Lorcan, you know the same, but you know a little bit more. You remember that it was that the Aasimar were created, the police of Methis, the Aasimar, what became the police of Methis, were created to fight this war along with the Kalashtar. They were also brought to happen because they were immune to mind control. So they could fight the Tieflings that went mad.
Yay!
Yes. Which makes sense why this Kalashtar that you met seems so focused on destroying this kingdom. It is basically what they were created for. But both of these were locked away in the Ferial. Neither of you have ever seen a Tiefling that has escaped this fate. Nix, you know a little bit more about the details. The Genasi were involved in this. Less, as far as you know, a little less than the elves, but they were the ones that came up with the idea of how to stop the king, the Mad King.
Such an asshole.
Which seems to be why there is no more of them. You also know that where the Tieflings originally came from was, funnily enough, very close to where this new city is risen. They were part of the border with the Federation, with the land of the elves. And you also know that the king of the elves there were rumors that he also went partially mad by the war. But there is no full proof of this, and the royal family keeps it very under wraps.
Of course it would.
But there's rumors of this. And that is also why a lot of halflings went from their original lands of Tron on the border with Federation and moved to an island provided by the two coasts as a safe haven into the Port of Grace, where you were from. Right. That's what everybody knows about the Third War.
Sounds like a lot of stuff happened.
Could you repeat all of that, please?
I can. Do you want me to?
No, I'm kidding.
Alright. So, this is what you all remember from what you've heard, what you studied, what you know. if there is a surviving member of the Tiefling royal family, they are sure pissed.
Imaginably so.
Mhm.
Speaking of being mad, at what point tonight do you plan on killing me?
I'm not telling you so you can prepare.
I would say that would be depending on how angry Nexus's mother is.
We're not getting to Carolyn tonight.
Damn it.
Maybe. Who knows? Depends how quickly you want to get through.
Damn.
Yeah, it depends how quickly you want to get through Linksica. You guys can technically avoid Linksica altogether. You can go in, get supplies, and get out without actually staying there. And that would shorten how long you need. You would need only an extra day.
Death is pending.
Death is pending. Right.
Great.
So, as Nix breaks these news to you, what is everybody thinking and feeling about this? I'll start with Cinder.
Thanks. Cinder is feeling like he got absolutely very little useful information out of that because he's still suffering. He needs a cure and he wants a cure. And he wants it now.
That's fair. It didn't actually, they seem to be working towards getting more people infected rather than a cure. So, yeah, it was kind of useless to Cinder in that sense.
Yeah, and he's starting to smell a bit worse since he's not back.
And I happen to know I'm not long for this world now, so.
I think you have you have
You
have 4 to 5 weeks. You had 5 to 6. It's been almost a week.
Not
4 to 5
according to
weeks.
you a couple minutes ago.
I don't know what you're talking about. Lorcan, what is Lorcan thinking about this?
Lorcan is just thinking about fighting the armies.
Oh, he's like, hey, 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 hey.
But I remember this place. I wonder if there's good fighters.
All right.
Nexus, what do you think? Do you think they have good fighters? I wonder if they're like, well, I don't know. If they're in bright armor from a kingdom of the sun.
Well, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Can you imagine me in this sparkly armor?
It's called your scales.
Why, thank you. I'm glad they sparkle today. You're also sparkling too, my friend.
Only half of me.
Yeah, I don't still. Yeah, don't look below the waist. You'll be fine.
I thought you never looked at me below the waist.
We'll start making you wear the tunic.
Alright, dress me. Gotcha.
Alright.
Don't let my mom see it.
Well, it's easier than putting you into crowds.
My knees bend the wrong way these days. Nix! What are you feeling?
Overwhelmed. We're
Overwhelmed?
trying to keep it from
Pouring out?
pouring out, yeah.
Nix
It's a
is
lot.
there with all this information and she's got the most stupid party. She's got no help.
Well,
Yeah.
in my
He's like,
defense,
"How am I
I
gonna
have brain
do that?"
damage.
How am I going to command these dum-dums to do what I need?
It's time. He just needs time to process. And it's time.
Alright. Very well, very well.
She's nervous but determined to see it through.
Okay. So, I need to know what is your plan regarding Linksica because we do have a karma card that will take effect at the next city. Are you going to just breeze past it or you want to actually go in it?
Do you need any supplies, Nix?
I think we need food, right?
You could make do because it's just like 1 day and you still had your own
Whoa.
rations.
You just say 1 day without food. Or
Nix,
on rations?
I am talking to Nix.
But it doesn't matter. Logan heard that 1 day without food or
Heard the voice of God.
Yeah, the boss of God.
alright.
Food! No food!
Yeah,
We'll
so
stop.
you can definitely get something on the outskirts of Links if you don't have to go in. but
We should be able to get like
you would, if you do that, if you
donuts.
rush from where you are to, because I haven't moved you in 2 days, you'd be back. Yeah.
Hmm.
If you rush, you could technically get to Carolyn. If you go at a fast pace, you could technically get to Carolyn before midnight. Not by sundown, but before midnight. And by then, you'd be able perhaps to get food somewhere. It depends what your plans are, everybody's.
Well, I can get Nexus to go hunt another frog.
Can I just say something? I have been
Yes.
trying to learn how to create food out of the air. It's not working
actually-
yet, but I think
She's
I'll
up for-
figure it out at some point. You know?
Is it good food or is it air food? Like
It's
will it fill the belly?
delicious food when you're starving to death. Okay, it's 30 gallons of water and 45 pounds of food, okay? I mean, we could eat like kings and drink water.
But will it be in my belly?
Um,
You say it comes out of nowhere. Ow.
well, let's just say it's created out of air.
But yes, it does stay in your belly.
Does it?
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
sure. I think. I
If
mean,
you're
we
talking
gotta
about
eat it all in
stuff
24 hours, but
24 hours is fine. That's all I need.
but like I said, I'm still working on the spell, so I don't have it down quite yet.
Well, I'll be your best buddy until then.
Yeah, so
When we
just to
increase
clarify-
our altitude, I think I'll get that spell down pat.
I thought altitude makes you busy, not giving you spells.
Well, basically, we gotta up our level of.
Ah, alright.
I know what you want. You want to level up. We're working on it. So just to clarify, this is your third day of travel. You had food for 3 days, which means you have food for today. Now you can push through and arrive at Carolyn very late at night, or you can make a pit stop at Lixica. I just need to know how quickly you want to get through Lixica.
I would like to get there quick, personally, and if we run out of food, we can always eat Nixus.
Nexus. Okay.
We can also see if that little lad's party came through that way.
Oh, you're right. Okay. So do you want to just ask at the entrance if they've seen the?
Nah.
Okay. Right, so very quickly, let me show you what Lixica looks like, which you would have seen on approach. There we go. It's a kobold settlement that, as far as Nexus and Lorcan know, it's basically a mining hub.
Ooh.
They sell
And
coke
this
here.
is the stream. Huh?
They sell coke here.
What do you mean?
There's coke storage. Left-hand side of the map. What kind of drug dealing place is this?
This is the storage.
It says Coke. C-O.
For the Coke markets. It says.
Coke storage.
Oh, Coke.
market.
Okay.
Yes, no, it's a name. It's not.
Oh.
Okay.
It's a name.
I'm fine.
It's alright, the Red Dragon Inn is also belongs to a red dragon, yes.
Yeah. So just I don't know how much you guys remember from the leaflet I gave you about the races of Methis, but the kobolds are basically worship the Dragonborn and work for them and under their direction. There are obviously kobolds that don't like this and feel like they've been enslaved, but most of them love the Dragonborn and respect Dragonborn. Dragonborn are considered very in high regard by the kobolds in this world. So when you approach, the kobold guards are very keen to answer your questions. And they did say that there were several caravans that passed through. What information do you give them to try to identify which one you're looking for?
I don't think many Dragonborn caravans are passing through at the moment.
There were several. They just said there were several.
It's a price on mine. There were several. Well,
Next will
one. How
next
would I say it?
Which one had
You
the
remember
most
the-
food with them?
next
Mhm.
steps up to
The core.
Kobold Guard.
Yes.
She goes, "Do you happen to know if there had been a convoy with Crystal Dragonborn?"
Oh, the Nubica! Yeah, 2 days ago.
2 days.
Yeah. Peter's breaking.
2 days ago.
Yes.
She notes that down.
Have you been around?
Maybe.
Great.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
You need to alert people that there's an issue on the roads.
Yes. Will do.
There are creatures that are attacking caravans.
Yes, sir.
That's easy.
She looks with her in the interaction, smiles.
I'm gonna walk away slowly because the little chirpy thing is a bit confusing.
Peter, I made Peter cry laughing. My goal for today. This was how you were gonna die. You were gonna asphyxiate.
Surprise.
I can feel it in my sarcophagus.
So you just pass through and you're gonna push to
Is there at the market we should be able to pick up components for
You don't
building?
know, but if you're going in, the card will take will take place here instead of Carolon.
Well, she'll
You definitely know that this is like a small settlement.
probably not long.
Carolon is bigger than Sweeler.
Hmm.
So if you want,
It's more likely to have
if you want to find specific stuff, you know that there is a
a
lot.
bigger variety in a bigger place.
Yes,
Harder to find.
it is a metropolis.
But she'll ask though. Just polite like that.
Yeah, but
Everyone, are we good to push through, or did anyone want to stop to pick
we
up
could
anything else?
probably negotiate better prices here, though.
With the kobolds? Probably
Yeah,
not.
they're dumber than we are.
They're very good at haggling, surprisingly.
And there might not be as much variety here. Smaller place.
No, there are green ones and blue ones, and no. I know.
She blinks. That's it.
It's like, I want to delay seeing my mother as much as possible, but
I want
Oh,
that's
oh,
right.
who
We
want
got
to-
bees.
All who want to push through to Carolyn to make him uncomfortable, say aye. Synthesis word.
No, not that eye. Christ.
all right. So we're pushing through to Carol.
The eyes have it.
No.
Halfway through the day, the kid falls asleep on the back of the
How
master.
How is he?
He's been quietly and happy and playing with his little doll.
Can we sell him?
With his little plushie.
Keeps an eye on it.
Sitting in his dog. He's having loads of fun with he's on an adventure.
Yeah,
This is
she
great.
keeps an eye on it productive if he needs anything.
He misses mom and he'd like to know where mom is, but you keep dodging the question. Like you did before.
I guess he's good for a
And-
snack.
Alright, before I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that. And we're gonna
Same.
because for the viewers, they're talking about making this adorable little dragonborn child that they found into a snack, and I'm
No.
gonna make everyone
That's
feel bad
sick.
about it.
Cinder is talking about that.
Ah, what is happening?
If anything, he'll accidentally turn him into stone before he can eat.
That is true. Where is the little? There you go. I'm gonna show everyone because it's adorable. I can't make it big. I can try actually. Let me see. Can I make it big? One second.
Nope.
I can't seem to make it big. Oh, I can. One sec. There.
Hey.
That is the child they're talking about using as a snack. Everybody?
Yeah, I'm not eating that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Might make a pair
So-
of shoes out of it, but I'm not eating it.
So
Yes.
they were pushing through
You're pushing through?
Nick's for the journey.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, all right, everyone, I've come up with a little something for if we're going to push through. And she's going to, basically, there's a flavored way of casting aid, but she's made little tonics for like 3 people. Right?
Mhm.
She's going to give one to Cinder, one to Nexus, and one to Lorcan. And she goes, drink those at the start of every day.
Why did I drop it?
Well, then you don't drink it then.
Will it not work then?
She goes, you have to find out.
I'll drink it.
And as a little treat, it should all taste as your favorite thing. So, more of encouragement to drink it.
I don't know what my thing is.
Next is drink some exploding fire balls.
I
She
thought
put
it was going to be
complete-
whiskey, honestly.
I do not have a problem. You can
Mmm, hot apple cider. My favorite.
And for those that
I don't
have
actually know what mine is. It tastes strange.
just unknown. So.
Oh,
everyone
sorry,
can
that's
add-
my urine sample.
Oh!
Oh.
also
So-
from Lorcan, please.
That's still wrong. No, that's the right one.
I want the concept.
Oh.
Back out.
That's why you tried to kill me.
That wasn't me. I think you looks at Cinder.
She took the sample. She was in charge of storage.
He glares at somebody.
All right.
Let me clear
Sorry.
my right one.
Yeah, so for those that drink their tonic, they can add +5 to their max health.
Yes, you can. Do you know? Does everybody know how to do that?
What was that?
You can add 5 to your max HP.
Oh,
On DB, and you
yeah.
just go click on your health and go max HP modifier
And
plus
click
5.
Hey, no, don't understand.
5.
Huh? It's 5.
It's 5.
I was just going to give myself that big thing.
Oh, temp HP is different. So temp HP is on the side of your max health. When you click on your health,
Yeah.
you can do
Max
max
HP
HP modifier,
I know.
and that's the one that is 5 for the 3 of you. All right. With that, you push through, and the sun is setting, and you are still just barely making out Caroline in the distance. But as you get closer and closer, and the night falls dark, it falls. You know, the night is fully out. There is no moon tonight, but the city itself is brighter than Swiona was, with all the lightning rods and all the electric lanterns. You see, Caroline it's a circular city. You see the curve of the wall, and it's massive. You don't see the ends of Caroline. You see the wall all the way to one side, all the way to the other. You know it's rounded, but you don't know where it ends. And you just see it as a massive lump of light in the distance, and as you get closer and closer, you realize that it's just thousands upon thousands of lanterns lit simultaneously. It is an incredible sight. The architecture is spotless. The stonecraft is incredible, only second to dwarves. And it is an immense citadel. And I will show you what Carolyn looks like.
D&D Beyond won't let me increase my max.
D&D Beyond, if you click on where it says current, with your, it should come up with your current HP, max HP, and then at the bottom you have healing, damage, and then at the bottom you have max HP modifier.
Yeah, it won't let me.
You
It lets me increase the number, but when I click away, it's not added to my max.
Well, that's unusual.
We'll sort that out on the break.
We'll sort that out on the break. So let me finish describing. The Carolyn, as you approach, you also see that the way you're coming from, the city itself has expanded beyond the wall. You're coming from this side. If you zoom out on the map, I'm thinking where you're coming from.
That's it. My foot next marker.
Yeah? You guys seeing? Everybody saw what I'm pinging?
Yes.
Cinder?
No. I was trying to figure out the hit point thing. Sorry. Ping again?
There you go.
Okay, I see it.
That's what I put
Right, so
next
you
to
come
them.
from
That's a big thing. Sorry, I live here.
yeah.
Wow, home.
Bigger than usual.
It is expanded beyond the walls, and to one of the sides you see large farmland. You assume that despite the everybody knows that usually the food production is done by the freelance, but it might not have been enough for this massive city. So they have their own, which is unusual.
We gotta eat.
Lorcan, you know that anything that is outside the walls is kind of the common people, the common folk. The outer wall is for merchants mostly, and like events and stuff like that. And the middle wall, within the middle wall is the nobility, and then in the center, the innermost wall protects the council members.
Which wall would I be based on?
You would be outside the walls.
Wait. Like near the outpost or near the golden cannon?
So neither.
Oh.
You're actually from closer to where the stadium and the arena are. So the stadium's here.
Side, yeah.
So you would have been born and grown up around this area.
So Weaver's Bar and Brewery. Ha ha ha.
Yes.
And the slums.
It's not the slums per se, it's just the common folk.
It says the slums.
The slums would be more where you're approaching now. So like this area is more slum-like than the one you're from.
It's the old slums.
Yeah. So the slums, this bit that is called the slums, is like they used to be. It's like they used to be really bad slums, but they've been improved. This area here is more slum-like than the original.
As I was a guard originally, where was I? Was it like a King's Outpost or where was the training? I know obviously the stadiums where I did the Colosseum stuff.
The Colosseum stuff, yes. You would have been training at the outpost.
Yeah.
Yeah, the King Sparrow outpost.
Alright, no worries. Cheers.
Also, you notice that the stream that went all the way up Lixica is connected to this, and this is the main river that comes all the way down past Lixica and everything. So this is what you've been following all the way down past near Swiona is a small stream of this large river. This river is like 300 foot wide, just the beach area. It is massive in length. It takes you about half an hour to walk the bridge.
Welcome to the great city.
Indeed, it is a great city. It is the metropolis of the seven cities. I don't know how much anybody else knows about it, but yes. Morgan, you know that, getting to Carolina is one thing. Making your way through Carolina
It's another.
is another entirely. It's about 11 p.m. at night. It is late. It is dodgy. And you know that getting from where you are to your home tonight is very risky. You would have to get through 2 sets of slum areas and the old slums, which is dodgy as well. Not to mention the outpost.
Everyone, we should go to an inn nearby for now. It's a very big city, and trying to get through it at night is a bit more difficult.
All right.
I agree. I really don't want to show up at my mom's door this late at night after being on for 3 weeks.
That would be quite funny, actually, but I also agree.
I will disguise self in the form of a dragonborn.
What kind of dragonborn?
What's the enemy dragonborn of his mother?
No, don't do that. You'll die.
I think it's like.
You don't know what his mother is against. You know his mother is.
A brass dragon.
You assume it's a brass dragon born, but you don't actually know.
Well, I don't know what kind of dragon to make myself. Dragonborn. I'm gonna go with a gold dragonborn.
That's fine.
Bronze.
Gold dragonborn's fine.
Brass.
You chose one that doesn't cause too much problems, which is good. Lucky. Also, let me just remind very quickly, Larkin,
Yes.
of a few details about his city.
Yeah.
Carolon is ruled by a large council, and the city is divided in sections. Right, the inner city is divided in sections, which each of them, each slice is ruled by a council member, and then the whole council rules the whole of Carolina.
So districts.
It's kind of like districts, yeah. You remember that, and that's why getting into the inner wall, if you move from district to district, some rules differ, and you have to be careful not to get caught up in that. So you know that they're very strict inside the inner wall. Outside is a bit more relaxed, which is why it's dangerous at night. But in the inner wall, if you ever need to go into the inner wall, which is where the markets are, where the big stuff happens, you gotta be careful, because moving from each district, there are different rules, and you have to be careful about it.
Yeah, basically.
Right. So,
Nix will defer to them to lead the way.
right. Are you trying to are you trying to go to an inn that you would have been acquainted with from the outpost?
I love the looks in there.
But also, would the outpost have places to stay, or would it not?
Yeah, if you wanted to stay as newcomers at the outpost, you can. Though you do know that one of the jobs you used to have to do is like register people in that are visiting the city. You could definitely do that. You're not here for anything conspicuous, and 2 of you are from the city.
Yeah.
So that is an option, and you could stay at the boarding there. For sure.
We'll do that.
Nix.
Alright.
Nix, you really have a thing for dragonborn, don't you?
While we're there, I'm also going to ask around about the party that left.
at the Kingsborough Outpost
I guess it'd be outpost.
Would've-
The guards, and we'll have a record of
of who goes in and
who's
out
in now.
this way. For
So-
sure, for sure. Good point.
It might not be the merchants because I don't know if there's a merchant caravan or not. So
All right.
I will go ask the guards there if they could check the records.
Hmm.
Okay, so you know more or less this area of the city. I would just like to get a survival roll with advantage for it. Unless you prefer history or the survival,
To navigate.
it's with advantage.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah, you know your way. You've not been here a little bit, but it's not changed that much. So,
It does never change.
so yeah, you make your way to the Kingsborough Outpost, and this is not like Swiona. Swiona in the evening, it's busy up till about midnight, which is more or less the time that by the time you start making your way actually in the city, it's around that time. But then Swiona goes quiet. It's dark and it's quiet. This
Not here.
not here. There is something going on at all hours of the day, and it's midnight and there's lights on and there's people moving about. There's people on the streets. There's things happening. And Lorcan is guiding you through main streets, I assume?
Yeah.
On the main streets, and you do see alleyways and like
Cinder, don't wander off.
people that look shady. You also see people that look very friendly, but that Lorcan ignores completely. So you're not sure what that's about. You see, there is one another thing that is very surprising comparing to Swiona, which is the big city you've been to. Swiona, you had people of many races. There was clear prevalence of the Dalkin, but you had lots of gnomes, you had elves, you had changelings, you had a lot of different peoples. This seems to you take about an hour to make your way to the Kingsborough Outpost, and you have yet to see anything that is other than a kobold or a dragonborn. Everybody looks at you. You, Nix, because Cinder is disguised as a dragonborn. You are not commonly seen here at all.
What about Kingside? It just seems a lot of like staring. At
You have not seen anything other than a dragonborn.
Yeah, put your head up, Nick. We'll say guys.
She was really self-conscious. She goes, very lively, yeah. Also, you could have mentioned that I would stand out like a sore thumb.
Well, what did you expect at a Dragonborn city?
Yeah, but that didn't mean it was all dragon. She looks around.
Oh no, this whole city is mostly all Dragonborn.
Okay, I will adapt to it. I just needed a knife to do that. It's fine.
I'm sorry.
Take a deep breath,
If
Nix.
you put your foot up, they won't notice, and most eyes will be turned away from that unless they look at your hands. We don't look at hands.
Oh, yeah, no, she will.
Yeah, Cinder?
She will up her foot.
Oh, I was just telling Nix to take a deep breath. With this many
Also the
attractive
dog
dragonborn around here.
Looks.
Hides. Okay. Right, so you make your way to the Kingsborough Outpost as you get there again. Dragonborn guard. Jonathan, Lorcan, roll me a D100.
D100. D100. 7.
Wow.
Wow.
He should get a
That's
reward for that.
That's actually a good thing, honestly.
That's actually a good thing.
Oh, great.
Hey.
This is someone I know.
Yes. It was kind of like a divine intervention thing. I kind of said that it was 10%. There's about 20% chance. So if you had 1 to 10 or 90 to 100, you would have had somebody who knew. So well done.
Wow.
Yeah, so you come across an old acquaintance of yours, but before we get on with that,
What's his name?
we're going to go on our break.
What's his name?
I'm gonna leave you hanging on that one. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be right back. We'll just take a quick 5 to 10 minute break, and then we'll be back full on in Carolon. We made it. We're here at the big metropolis. Woo! So let's find out a lot about Larkin and Nexus. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out.
We took a little bit longer than expected because everybody was getting food and party breaks. So thank you for bearing with us and sticking here. And this is the part 2 of today's session on the Legends of Methis. We just arrived at Carolon. It is very late at night. We went directly to the outpost to see who's on duty. Larkin is leading the way, followed by Nix's disguised Cinder, and then Nix trying to hide in her hood. Bringing along 2 mastiffs, one carrying a sleeping child. All right, if everybody's ready, you come to the outpost and you knock on the office door, and you know who is there. You recognize, so does Nexus. You guys just hear Nexus go, oh.
Nix looks up from her hood.
Everybody seeing it? Is it work? Did it work
No.
first time?
Yeah. Oh, well, I see the picture.
This Dragonborn looks at the door, opens the door, face to face with you, Larkin. He goes,
Ah, Gamper.
what do you want?
We were just coming here for lodging, if that's all right.
Not with me. He goes to shut the door.
And I need to inquire about a traveling, what do we call it?
A convoy.
A convoy.
He opens the door slightly. You're off duty, and he goes to shut the door.
I know I'm off duty. I was traveling through. I need to talk to you about it. I need to report this incident.
He stops just with the lid. Why do you always bring me paperwork?
Oh, unfortunately, it's gonna be a lot. So when do you go off shift?
Ah, thank you. That's the question I'd like to hear. 6 a.m.
Well, would we be able to rest and report it in the morning?
Well, you know your lovely inn tavern nearby.
Well, where?
You'd know that the outpost has like a boarding inn for people that come.
Do you know who's on in the morning, Blanca?
Nope, don't care.
Ah, okay. Good night.
He closes the door.
We'll let them know in the morning, guys. That was Glampa. He's very good when traveling because he brings his own tent. We call him Glampa Van.
Nix.
You don't have inspiration.
He does already.
Yes. Nix is like,
She doesn't get it.
right. So, Larkin, you know that basically, if you guys zoom in on the map, the outpost office is here, and in the tower, and then Larkin and Nexus would know. Nexus was hiding from Gampa. Everybody knows that, and the inn for people that are staying just for like the night or traveling through, or merchants that are here to make a business or stuff like that, is this inn that is open at all hours. And it's where the guards also go after their shifts and stuff like that. You'd know it.
Yeah.
Nix is gonna go poke to Nexus.
Mhm.
What?
What? What?
What's your problem with him?
I
Comes back
may
to
or
plan.
may not have slept with his sister.
Nix just walked away.
What? You asked.
Doesn't reply.
Nixus is
Lovely.
a tramp. Nixus is a tramp.
It was when we were back in school.
Sure. If you say
Full
so.
circle of the
Yes. Were you underage then? I can't remember.
No.
Nix is going quiet.
Right, so you make your way to the inn. Larkin, roll me a D100.
Another D100. 93. Oh my god!
I assume that's bad because 7 was
No,
good.
so it's 1 to 10 and
This is the
90
perfect
to
dimension.
100.
But if you add it up, it's a perfect 100.
You did it. You know everybody in this town as far as they're concerned. So you move on and you go to the inn. And this time it is someone you like and are acquainted with.
Oh no. Oh no. How the hell do I say that?
Yeah, you call her Mia.
Thank you. Thank you. We just walked in.
Yeah,
Do I
and she's
see them?
cleaning the bar.
Mia, how are you?
Oh, look! Not seen you two in a while. Here comes Larkin and his Siamese dumb twin. Hey, I'm not the dumb one.
You sure?
She looks so Larkin. It's been a while.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Who are your friends? Who's that? And she looks at Nick.
Nix is no, it's just like this.
Oh,
I'm behind.
I'm sorry, she's
The
mine.
small.
Yeah. And who's that gorgeous over there?
Oh, that would be
Okay.
me.
Nix is a bit confused as she forgets to hide. She's like, who are you talking?
Talking about me, dear.
Yeah, she is a golden dragonborn too.
Hi.
Oh, uh-oh.
Hi. Hello.
I've spoken for, right, Nix?
She goes, I don't know him.
Uh,
See you
right,
now.
Larkin, whatever your name is.
Yes, what about it?
I've spoken for, right? A tooth
Oh.
falls out and goes flying.
He's got a bit of a condition at the moment, unfortunately, this one.
Is it
Yeah.
contagious?
Oh,
Oh, that's fine then. Welcome.
no.
My name is Nian Zasijush Mipatis. You can call me Mia.
Nice to meet you.
Who's that? She points at me.
This is
Ah.
Nix, one of our traveling companions.
That's mine and
Nice to-
Nix's
again.
kid.
Is it a dragonborn with nenism?
What?
Then Nix will recognize the word, right?
Yes, nenism is like being a dwarf.
Mean that, yeah.
She's not a dragonborn? Can you not see it?
She has a hood hiding.
No, she's not a dragonborn. She's what's her no?
You don't see where she's gone beat red underneath her hood.
Yeah, she's a gnome, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You brought a gnome to the city.
What do you mean? I brought a gnome to the city. The gnome brought herself, thank you.
Well, there you go. Lorcan, and who's that? Who did you get pregnant this time?
Whoa. No, this is just the
Me?
child we're trying to find our parents.
Did I forget
Yeah,
to
Nix.
mention I'm a female
Long
gold
story.
dragonborn?
They'll throw it to the morning. We're gonna take them to the guards in the morning after our rest.
Oh, yeah, it's Scamper. You'll have no luck there today.
Oh, I noticed.
Nix would just make sure your product is fine.
I adjust
So they
my
think-
illusion so I look like a female dragonborn with a big belly.
Do you do that straight away, or do
She
you?
looks
I'm
like-
carrying Lorcan's child.
Whoa.
Nix giggles.
It's alright, he was a man a second ago.
Yeah, I'm confused. Do you have magic friends now?
No, he's the special case.
Ah.
He's a special nut case.
I've always found you funny. What happened to your knees, Nexus? Nexus.
Yes. Nexus, what's happened to your knees?
Nexus goes, that's my own business. She goes, your mom's been around. She nearly destroyed half the inn, you know. She's at the hospital for a week. You're in trouble. She's at the hospital for a week. You're in trouble.
She's been in hospital?
Nexus looks at me. Dude, why didn't I have left otherwise? I was gonna get money to pay the bills.
She was unwell, I remember.
She's like, oh, she's fine.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much trouble is he? He points to Nexus.
100.
Knowing, well, let's put it this way. Most of the town knows his mother.
Oh yeah.
For different reasons.
Oh yeah. I guess you guys don't want to show up at this time there, do you?
Nexus
Come on,
told us
I'll
nobody
take
tells him what to do.
Sorry?
Nexus told us that nobody tells him what to do.
He tells himself that. Let him believe it. It's not true. Even I tell him what to do sometimes.
Nyx forgets to hide, and she because I knew it when she looked at Nexus.
So she is a gnome.
Yes, she is a gnome. Nice to meet you.
So you just speak.
Name is Nyx, huh?
Hmm.
How did you end up with 3 dragons? I'm not sure about that one, but at least 2 dragonborn.
Long story, but a work in progress.
I would suggest you keep your head up during the day if you don't want to attract attention to yourself. Unless you're in the Marcus district, there you'll be fine.
I keep it up at night for sure.
Well, I might have something for that for tomorrow. Thank you for that.
Now, we're a bit full today. There's been a couple of trips in. I do only have one large room. I hope you're all okay, Sharon.
No, that's what we can make do one thing.
And good. The plus side is it has its own bathroom.
Hope it's cheaper.
That'll come in handy if my water breaks.
Is he actually pregnant?
No.
Okay. I'll give you a discount, Larkin, but same old deal?
Do I know what the old deal was?
The old deal
I'll
is
just
that
go yes.
you let her if she leaves at night when you're on duty, you don't report it.
Deal? Not that I'm going to be able to do it, but yeah. No, it isn't.
Alright. Come with me. She guides you upstairs and she shows you into this big room. Like each room that you had in the purple lotus
Yeah.
is this is like 3 of those rooms together.
Oh, wow. That's quite a lot.
Yeah, she's like, well, I did say I only had the big one. Come on, settle in. See you guys in the morning.
We'll put the little guy into one of the beds.
Oh, yeah, do you want a crib?
Is he big enough? Is he small?
She,
He's like 3 tall.
yeah.
If you have one big enough for him, then yes.
Yeah, I'll bring you a little bit.
Yeah. Put a lid on it as well.
You see that she goes out, and then you see this bed, like something invisible is carrying this bed into the room. And she goes, right there, thank you boys. Good night, everyone. And she goes away.
That's notable.
Oh, that's normal. Things float with them.
Can Nyx do an Arcana to
Yes,
see
he
what?
can.
Okay, thank you. It's like, yes, you can, immediately. Awesome. Tell me your secrets. It's in that 19, 4, 26. Do I need to guide myself? I will guide myself.
Unseen servant. This is my unseen servant.
Yeah, she talks to the air, and the air does stuff for her.
Nix just nods like. Hmm.
You see Nexus goes up to a couch and just it lies down. So Larkin, you and Mia, huh?
What's up with me and Mia? Don't look so smug. Your mother's tomorrow.
Oh, shush. Let me sleep in peace one night. Oh. Anybody want to do anything before going to bed?
Alexa.
That's in the morning.
No.
Cinder? Shall I take it back?
I'm good. I'm good. I can't wait to drop this illusion.
I suggest he gets a bath before meeting Nexus's mother.
My boobs are heavy and I want pickles and ice cream.
Anyone got this spell?
I'm working on it.
Right. Does that mean everybody goes to sleep?
Yeah.
Okay. So you could technically take a long rest, but nobody's used anything. If you have
I will need to use the
long
rest.
rest. Yes, long rest. Don't forget to put your aid on. Then you wake up in the morning.
And I roll my
New
Alexa.
day.
Bye.
Staff of healing fully recharged.
Woo!
Hey.
What we like there.
So, Larkin, roll me a D100.
Idea 100. 36.
36. Right, whoever's on duty the next day, you don't know, must be either one of the guys that you switch with so you never see, or a new guy you're not.
You see the dog, you're gonna be complicated.
Alright. So you go okay, sorry, before that, yeah, you all wake up. What do you do?
Greeting. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought
Morning, no, morning.
Next roll for her Alexa.
Yeah, go for your elixir.
Go.
we go to the dog house.
1 second.
We need something cool. Ooh, I don't think I got one before. That's a 5 is. Oh no, I did. It's a flight potion. Okay.
Right. Everybody, anything else you wanted to do in the morning before going down for breakfast?
I guess I better recast my illusion.
And I think he needs to recast his smell as well.
Yeah, you can recast your illusion, that's fine.
Nick sprays him with a little turtle.
What does Nyx do? Nyx wanted to do something as well?
So apart from making her experimental flight potion, she has concocted herself. It's flavoring for all the stuff.
So,
And she's got like this potion, this little flask.
post told herself for me. I want to check something. Are they going to assume you're a child?
Yeah. Doesn't change the height,
The height. Okay, cool.
but it's solid.
So you look like a dragonborn child. Cool. The kid, do you explain to the kid who you are? Who you're asleep?
Yeah, so she goes,
He was asleep
If-
last night, so he
yes.
doesn't know that you and Cinder have changed forms.
oh, she doesn't change, she'll tell him before she changes.
Okay, cool.
So she'll explain, it's like, hey, Ibrida,
Interesting.
do you want to see something interesting?
Is it more magic?
We've got a little flask of like this purple liquid.
He's like watching you carefully.
She uncorks it and she goes and takes a swig.
Which kind of dragonborn do you become?
She's gonna become basically a parallel of Ibridak, but a girl.
Oh, so like a blue one.
The blue one, yeah.
The blue dragonborn, the kid.
Of the kid.
Ah,
So we could
Like
be
a
the brother and sister.
Yeah.
Like,
He's like,
and she wears. The only difference, she's got violet eyes, and the rest is this blue dragonborn.
Ooh. I think now magic would make you be like me.
Because magic is full of possibilities for those to explore its potential,
I want to have magic someday.
and I think you'd be great at it. But
Yay.
for now, I could pass off as your sister, big
He
sister.
gives you a big hug.
What's his name again?
Ipperdog.
Ipperdog.
But that you need to practice and work hard at school to be able to get into the magician guild.
Okay.
Well,
I'll ask
just
Dad
then,
about it.
Just think, being able to use magic.
But I know you can do it. You just
Something
kind
to
of
work hard for.
moves him on the snout. Speaking of your dad, we're gonna go find him. Okay?
Okay. He always told me not to leave the walls of the city though, so I don't know how to get there.
It's alright. What we'll do is we'll talk to the guards first so that we can find where to go, and then we'll take you there.
Okay.
So, are we alright to go to the guards?
Mhm.
Cinder?
Cinder?
You all ready, Cinder?
Yes, yes. I mean, yes, I'm ready.
He looks funny.
Are they? What do you mean?
Ugh.
Are you transformed against it? Yeah.
Yeah, he is. He's a.
I am a gold pregnant dragonborn woman.
Then why do you have such a deep voice?
Because you and Nexus do. Don't all dragonborns sound like this?
Did Nia sound like us?
Is this the way you're gonna treat the mother of your child?
You see the kid is just laughing. He thinks it is like a sketch. If you come downstairs, Mia's there, serving breakfast. Hello, darlings, morning.
Morning.
It's very busy. There's like 30 different tables full. I'll get you breakfast in a minute. We have the usual and decide what you want.
Just get us 5 portions. Forgot about the kid. And a kid, 4 of them kids meal.
On our way. 2 kids meals? She winks and then goes off. And then she does a double take.
She like mixes wives.
And she goes, nice one. And she's like sorting people out. And it takes a little bit. You guys don't know. Laura cannot order the usual. Nexus is like, oh, it's been a while. As she comes, you see this is she puts in front of you a plate which has like 5 or 6 different types of meat, potatoes and bread and cheese, with a tankard of, you're not sure what, but it smells sweeter than mead, but less than cider.
Much is it?
It's a specialty here.
May I have a bucket, please?
Bucket. Why do you need a bucket? Sorry, bucket.
A bucket. Morning sickness.
Oh, get him a bucket fast.
Oh, sure. You see again something invisible is like carrying you in a bucket.
If it's invisible, how can we know it's dancing like that?
Because
You see the bucket wobbling.
You see the bucket wobbling.
I'm gonna hug the bucket under my chin.
You see, for the kid, she brings a little later a little plate. She's like a miniature version of your big plates, but it's got a few greens in.
You for a kid.
Yeah.
She
It's got like a smiley face, but
Okay,
it's
now.
not just.
She looks at you for that. Now, little brother, eat it off. It'd be
You
good for you.
see, he's like, yeah. And he starts eating it.
I like both Nexus on the shoulder. Yes, finally.
Like, been a while since we had something like this. Let's go. Then you guys lunch for breakfast. As she comes back, she goes, "You want me to put it on your tab? You owe us a little bit."
What, he owes you a little bit? I don't, surely.
Fine. That would be 4 stones.
Nick's slowly watching the interaction between me and Lorcan.
4 gemstones.
That. Do I have the gemstones on me?
I don't know. It's 10. It's gemstones. It's when. So we have gems and gemstones. Gemstones are smaller. So it would be the equivalent of 1 gem worth 10.
Don't think we have money on this. I think it's in the communal. So.
No, Nyx has it.
See, Nick reaches into her, pulls out a pouch from the bag of holding, and passes him, I think 10, so it's an obsidian.
An obsidian. That would be worth.
10.
She goes off, takes care of a few other things, and then comes back. And she goes, "Come on."
Here you go.
Woo! Not even need for change today. Doing. Be on your way. Don't know who's in today though, but good luck.
Hi. See you soon, Mia.
Bye. And she's busy with like.
Thank you.
other customers.
Busy day for her. Alright, let's go to the guardhouse.
Right.
Come on, if that, to make sure that.
Do you want to keep him outside for now? I'll talk to the guard first.
She'll mount him up on his master.
I'll knock on the door and go in.
Right. So this is who you see.
Would you
Yes.
like a seat, Cinder? Take a seat outside. It will save you from your belly strain.
Black vomit goes into the bucket.
No, yeah, he kept the bucket.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Nick's make sure that Iproduct does not see the black gunk that's coming out of Cinder.
I will prestidigitate it into regular vomit.
Ew.
And Nick's would just spray and make it disappear completely.
Oh, thank God.
Morning. My name is Nistiak. How can I help? She doesn't even look at you.
My name's Lorcan. I just
She looks up.
I
I've heard of you. You're one of us. What do you want?
have to report an issue with a caravan.
You know whose name it was under.
Do I know?
You
I,
have
see-
the.
you see-
I have the itinerary.
Nick's also whispers, it's your side ramps.
You're outside this room.
My message.
Message.
She's got the itinerary. It's fun. So.
You hand in the sheet. She goes, "What happened to the caravan?
Deceased,
All of it?
except one child.
There is no child on the sheet.
It's plus one.
Oh,
I know,
Really,
I-
too.
you see her take a deep breath and put it on. Write something on it and put it on a pile.
They were. They perished on the road to Sphere.
Oh, the attacks are getting further and further north. Then
It was. What were they again? It was Demon? No.
brood guards.
Brood guards or something. We bumped into a clash starter who had sorted the issue.
Oh, I see.
The issue was there was a crystal gun. On them.
She looks back at the sheet.
What's her name?
Oh, dear God, we're gonna be in trouble for this one. Oh, why me? Paperwork. Fine. Sure, I'll report it to the main guard in the inner wall.
Okay. Would you be able to have the directions to this young boy's family? Do you know of the area that they reside?
Do you know? Oh, yeah. Let me see if we've got any notes on it. Do you know anything about it? Merchants, nobles.
I only have their name and their funding.
I'm guessing they work for the Crystal Dragon.
Retainer.
You see her look through like big volumes of stuff, and then she brings one out. Yeah. registers, like trying to find it. She goes, nope. Nope. Aha. Means not difficult to get to. And it's in the inner wall. It's in the middle wall. Near the Royal Armory. The small mansion. On the Blue District. So, working, you would know that this is the Royal Armory. This is the Blue District of the middle wall. So it'll be the small. She's saying that the small mansion. So it'll be either this one or this one.
Okay. Well, we'll go and ask around. Thank you for your help.
That's all right. Thanks for the paperwork. Are you back on duty anytime soon?
I'm taking leave at the moment.
All right. As long as you let the boss know.
But no, they know I've been out of the city.
Right. When you coming back? I mean.
Unsure. But I'll let the bosses know I'm back for now. But I currently have a guest, so
I have a note of the runaway at Nexus.
Oh no, he's dead. It's fine.
Oh,
Wait,
is
no.
he gonna be back on duty then?
He is currently having a medical issue. So actually not.
I need the paperwork for that.
Nexus!
Nexus.
You've got paperwork!
Nexus is like he was in with you at first and then he bailed out.
Get back in.
Is he outside with me?
Yeah. He goes, so Nick's and he locked it there. And he's like
She just goes, hi.
Nexus looks.
Staying at the desk. Okay.
He's like, ugh. He gives him a sheet. Fill it in. And she closes the big book. He goes and takes it, puts it back. Do we have any people to register?
Yes. We have
She pulls out a book that is closer to her hand. She opens it.
Nix and a Cinder.
Nick's what?
I
Look,
just know her as Nix. She's Nix.
she just puts down Nick's.
Nick's. Stay. Length of the stay.
Undetermined, but should only be for about a week.
I'll put a week. If she stays longer than a week, you need to report
Alright.
back to us. Reason for the stay?
Visiting? Tourism? Do we have
All of the
tourism?
above.
Is there tourism?
No, it's visiting.
She's gonna help me deliver my child.
The other one's called Cinder. He's outside.
Cinder. He's like, is that a... I don't want to know.
No,
Cinder
that's-
what?
Cinder's...
Cinder.
Cinder. Look, you guys are letting look name. It's Cinder Barrett.
Margaret and...
Nick's good reseller.
The Vulcan's like,
No, then.
I know. Vulcan doesn't know.
Cinder. Length of the stay, I'm assuming is the same.
Well, I hope so.
And the reason I'm gonna put the same too. Anything else?
No.
If you want to carry out business in the name of these people, you know the rules. Because
Wait, that we have to conduct that business?
no, if you want to conduct this business in their name, you have to ask for permission.
Oh, okay.
Can I have a blank birth certificate, please?
He walked in.
I'll probably give birth here.
He pulls out a sheet.
No. Don't give him that. Don't give him that.
Her. How rude.
This is Cinder. He's not a dragon lord.
Huh. It's for me, not for Cinder.
You do know that the rules are you cannot use magic within the inner wall of the city, right?
Yeah, Lorcan.
Trust me.
I'll take that birth certificate. Thank you.
Left on this one, it's a lot better than his true form.
I don't care if there's problems because I haven't told you. I will remind you. Middle wall of the city, you can use magic, but with permission. The outer wall of the city, you can use magic. The inner wall of the city, it is forbidden.
Okay, fine. And I will drop the illusion.
No, wait. She said.
It's
Did you pay attention to her? Son?
it's fine.
So it's fine outside the walls. It's fine in the first wall, outer walls. It's not fine. It's fine within reason in the middle one, and in the inner wall, it's forbidden.
I still drop the illusion.
Palace. Royal Palace.
Yeah, where the royal palace is. Yeah. So do you drop the illusion?
No.
Yes, showing my full pustules and everything.
She goes. Are you?
I'm
bringing
terribly
in
sorry.
Contamination into the city.
That's gonna require another form.
I don't want to break the law.
He was contaminated.
Goes to another cabinet.
I will overlook this. Please use your magic at will.
Oh, thank you. Can I have documentation and that birth certificate, please?
She passes you the certificate. She pulls out a form, stamps it. Temporary use of magic pass.
Thank you.
For medical reasons.
It is only usable for 3 days. We cannot provide more than that.
Well, I hope we don't have to stay the whole week, because...
You can come back and ask us for another 3-day one, but the third time we can't provide it.
Do you always talk like that?
I am
Very robotic.
So
Beautiful.
Go about your day. Let me finish the paperwork you have brought to me.
Wait.
Yes.
What are you doing this evening?
Very glad I wasn't on shift. So
Resting.
You know,
would you be able to let us know how it goes?
What?
Well, you know, alerting the investigation. The crystal dragon bolt might have wanted.
Yes, sure. You'll probably you will probably hear news before you come and ask us what is going on. But yes, I can make a note that you are interested in this case.
Thank you. Right. Shall we be off then?
She looks at Nexus. The boss will want to speak with you soon. Your mother wants you first.
Sorry. Oh, this is good.
so
I
do
do
I...
have a note that if you go into medical absence because of your mother, you are excused from the punishment of the boss. Good luck.
Would you like to have dinner tonight?
We might not be able to eat tonight.
The lady looks at you.
I'll show
If
you
you're
my
paying
eye.
to go home straight after, I will take the free food.
It's a date.
I'll show you my eye.
Right.
Great.
Please let me fill the paperwork you have left me to do.
Shall we, let's go.
See you later, alligator? I'm sorry, is that an insult to Dragonborn?
See you later.
She
Alex.
glares at you.
You're a beautiful person. Don't let anybody, including Nexus, tell you differently.
She looks at Nexus. Nexus like,
I didn't.
Nexus isn't going to be able to talk soon, it's fine.
I shut up.
Nice meeting
good
you.
luck. Have a nice day. She shuts
You
the door.
too, dearie.
Sounds like she's dead from the paperwork already.
I think she likes me. Anyways, and I'll recast disguise self.
Right.
Gotta
Nick,
use a
what are
spell
you-
slot for
what are
that.
you up to outside.
All the good stuff was happening. No, she Nexus got dragged in. I guess she would have been looking around, making sure every duck was okay. She goes, so, Ipaduck, what's your father's name?
I have it written.
Well, we're gonna need it soon.
Yes, I know. I have it on my notes for once.
Aaron's like, why did I ask Nex what she was up to?
Yes.
Could have glossed over it.
My father is Inkso.
Ink what?
Inksol?
Ink Sal or Ink Soul?
INXAO.
Ink Zal.
Inkso. Inkso Jafar.
Jafar.
My dad. I don't have my dad's last name.
Ah, see. Well done for remembering that bit, but
Dad is important.
is it?
Yeah. He's like.
Prince
He-
Ali.
He always told me the name. I always forgot. It starts with a B. He's a noble.
Butler.
That's it.
Ah, brilliant. I don't know why I sounded all, brilliant. You know, what was it? Sorry. Let's go then. Nix, that means he'll be on duty right now.
Okay.
We can find him there, but it's probably best if we get him off duty first.
Okay.
I don't mean to
Let's
be
go in.
pushy, but I would like some food.
You've just eaten.
I know, I'm a growing woman. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm a growing woman.
Look. And then
He's funny.
he's very
Silly
funny.
is what it is.
Just don't get too close. Can Nick see as we'll take it going towards Product's father, hopefully.
Yeah,
You going first there?
yes. Yes.
Can she-
Yes.
On a
Next.
scale
Sorry.
sorry. On a scale of 1 to 10, how flustered is Nexus looking right now?
Very worried. He's looking everywhere all the time in case someone walks by that knows him.
Can Nick's try and like if he's looking around on his back. Like,
He turns.
You wait
she
till I
looks at
see.
the product to see if he like the. He's very jumpy today.
It'll be a little bit calmer when we get through the first wall because there's less people that will recognize him.
You guys don't live in the first wall?
No, we're outside the wall.
Oh, so you're the poor people.
No, we're the workers.
Okay.
I'm your guard. That's what you're talking about.
Financially challenged.
Okay. That's what the lady always says, though.
What?
Yeah, outside the walls is only poor people.
That lady has a very bad perception on life. Because
I don't
look
know.
at
She's got a point.
the money she's got. We own a tavern. Don't forget.
I'm broke.
You're broke.
I never have any money.
That's because you take it off and you spend it.
I have 5 golden gems or whatever they are.
Golden gems.
We're doing this all on the way, I'm guessing.
Yeah, walk and talk.
You'll walk and talk.
Walk and talk.
Okay,
Walk and
so
talk.
eventually you get to the wall, and there's into the outer wall. There's guards at the entrances and stuff, but there's not like.
We at the one near the merchant.
So which way? Yeah, I would assume that's where you're going through.
We've gone across and come through the harbour way.
Yeah, let's. You can move Nix's token.
Oh, I can't.
You could have gone in here.
Well, No, we wanted to go through main gate. It's
Main
easy to
gate?
get through.
Okay, so yeah, there's guards there, but they don't really stop you. And again, as Larkin said, this is where like business happens. There's no issues getting through here. And here is the first time that you see something other than dragonborns. You see humans, and you see a few elves. You see, not much more than that in variety wise. There is very little here. There's Asimar as guards. Most of the guards here are Dragonborn, but there is the occasional Asimar. But again, mostly still the big majority is Dragonborn. And you get through that part of the city, no problem. Are you going straight to this one?
We will be walking through, yeah.
Yep.
Unless Nick sees something that she wants in the merchants.
Yeah, this is the merchant district. So there is shop fronts everywhere, and it's of everything, anything you can imagine. Clothes, magic items, accessories, everything you can think of. You see a shop that has it.
To be looking around for any shop that has any components, like could be like a tinkerer's workshop, even like a to a certain degree a blacksmith to see if they have any like scrap metal.
There is,
Would that be in the merchants?
no. So smithing
Jewelers.
would be outside
Outside.
of the city wall, but jewelers for sure.
Okay. Should just make a note of it. Of all the shops here, like they've got jewels.
There's weaponry shops, but not like those shops. You look by the looks of it, they're just to sell made stuff. They wouldn't be making them themselves.
We've all got the artisan section at the top.
Mm-hmm.
She makes notes of that to come
Yeah,
back.
if you ask Larkin, he knows the layout of the city.
Yes, okay.
If you want to find that kind of thing, he's like, oh, you're better off in the artisan guild.
I'll make note of all the shops here though. They might be handy if you need to buy anything. How long has it been since we left?
It'd be another hour.
Okay. You notice as she says that, her half her face is turned back to Nick's. She's like put and she pulls out another flash. Excuse me. Takes it. Oh yeah, well, it lasts an hour. So she takes another swig of alter form, and it goes back, pops back out.
Does the capital square have markets? Is that what those are?
Hmm. Yeah.
Market stalls and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, those are market stalls. Those are where the people that don't have their own building for shops have the food, have their goods.
You might also find some good stuff at the markets. It's usually a bit cheaper than the merchants because they don't have their own shop and things, but they're usually up and coming craftsmen.
I'll have to check it out. Craftsman to craftsman.
They're like the apprenticeship journeyman sort of level.
Okay. Yes. Nothing. Let's get this little fellow home. She's keeping.
Well, yeah, shall we continue up to the next?
Yeah. The next gate, however, there are guards and that stop people going through and ask. So you come across a guard that goes, halt, state your business.
Escorting a child back to their parents.
They look
At
the
the
child.
on the master.
Which residence is it part of?
A mansion near the Royal Armory. He's one of the servants there. It's his father.
Name?
What was it again? Next.
So.
Hey guys, insult
So.
You see, he looks at a guy. You see the guy kind of, his eyes glow. And he goes,
So.
yeah, so there were two people, the two guards. The first one that was talking to you, he looks at his colleague. His eyes glow. Like he's casting something.
Oh no.
And then he nods, and they let you through the gate.
You're muted.
You're muted, Peter.
I hold up my slip saying I can use magic as I walk by.
They extend their hand to look at it. Hand it back to you. Nod.
Thank you. My
Please use
back
it
is killing
mindfully.
me.
And we'll continue on our way with that before we get worse.
So yeah, you make your way through. It's been another half hour.
What are we almost at the residence?
Yeah, by the time you get to the residence, it's been almost 2 hours.
Shall we? Would you guys wait here? I'll talk to the butler first.
You see, Nixon is way more relaxed than.
I'll bring him. Well, we'll get him to go to his quarters before we give him any news. Do you think that's a good idea?
Am I? You see that the kid is, as you approach, he goes, "That's home," and he points you to which one it is.
You want to just wait here next?
What? I'm not going to sit down.
Oh, you wait. We'll get him first.
Just wait here and we'll get it all sorted.
Oh, okay. I miss Dad. I miss Mom too.
Nexus, why don't you wait? Is the sweet shop nearby? Or?
He would be back in the market.
No, never mind.
You could have stopped if you wanted.
Well, I was just getting something to distract the kid.
Nix.
Nix will distract him with the little Johann automaton she has. Like, look at this.
Right.
I can make you one.
I'll go with Nexus to talk to the father.
What was Cindy trying to say?
Oh, I was just going to suggest that Nix say her goodbyes to the child because once she goes home, you won't be seeing her again, right?
That's not what he said that one.
That's, I'm sorry, I should have been more sympathetic when I said that out loud. Nix, you won't be seeing anymore, so say your goodbyes.
Nix is blinking at Sundra. Just staring at him.
Yeah, Nexus just rolls his eyes.
And then we walk off.
Yeah. Right.
She goes, thank you, Cinder.
We'll knock on the door at the back.
As you knock on the door, soon enough, Blue Dragonborn opens the door.
Greetings. Good day.
Good day.
How
How may I help you? Do you have an appointment with her ladyship?
not seek to have an appointment with the leadership. We are Inxel Japan.
That is me. What do you wish my services for?
We need to talk to you about the caravan.
You see his expression changes. He goes
You
stern.
come off duty, so
No,
I recommend.
but I can take a pause. Please, bear with me 1 second. His expression was, he was containing anger.
Anger.
Mm-hmm.
Anger.
If you remember, the kid said Dad didn't want them to go on this expedition. So he goes back in, he closes the door. Next is like, oh, this is gonna be good.
Hey, don't ask me.
Sure. Takes about 5 to 10 minutes till he comes back out. He closes the door behind him. You may speak. What of the caravan?
Unfortunately, we're here to be back. The caravan was attacked on the way.
You see his eyes widen.
Your wife was not made it. Or partner, I don't know actually.
You see he's just kind of like in shock. He's not responding.
Your son has made it, we brought him back. He was the only survivor.
You perhaps here?
Yes.
Does he know what happened to Ember?
We haven't been told. Until the best.
You see, he's
She protected him, that's why.
not. If it's the only survivor, that means her ladyship's son is also.
We have spoken to the guards and they were proceeding through their channels. But we came to return them.
Was there, if there were no other survivors, he was on that.
Was he the crystal cabin?
He nods. You see, he's like holding back emotions, everything. His eyes are still kind of.
That's kind of why I wanted to do it separately, because I needed to be composed for his kids.
He goes, I appreciate you bringing the child back to me. He takes a deep breath. Do you mind keeping him for
No, we can
5
take
more
him.
minutes?
Well, if you like, we can take him to the market to get some sweets whilst you.
That would be perfect. I bring him back here in a bit. I have to inform her ladyship and it won't be nice. I don't want him around.
No,
Very well. Thank you. He goes to go back in. What is your names? Nexus.
I'm Logan.
I shall make note of it. Thank you. He goes to go back in and he pauses. He looks back at Nexus. Are you by any chance Akka's child?
Oh, no.
Nexus goes, yes. I see.
Godspeed.
Thank you.
Is that a good look? So,
It's the fact that, everybody knows her, and he's kind of like, oh, okay, that's how I will tell who brought us the news to the lady, because she won't know who the hell you guys are. And he looks and nods and goes, thank you. And he goes back in. He's clearly like very disturbed.
obviously. God, he's just been told his whole, caravan has been killed with his wife and his lord.
Yep, he goes back in.
Jesus.
This was pretty quick interaction. It took about 5-6 minutes. Unless Cinder and Nix wanted to do something in particular.
Nix did want to talk to Ibarak. She would have got Eracy, her master's kind of like, saddle up, so kind of like both masters kind of like entertaining him. And as Ibarak is comfortable, she would stand next to him. She goes, Ibarak, you remember what I told you about your mother? She's gone far away.
Yeah.
Well, she's gone very far away. She's passed on, but I want you to know that she loved you very much, and she always will be with you here. And she kind of perks in his chest.
Okay. You see, he seems confused.
Yeah.
Your father will explain.
Okay.
Just tell him I said that.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I miss her though.
I know, but I know wherever she is, that she will always be with you. Like me. And she will, I guess, again, every time you want to, you want to think of me, he looks and points to the master.
And I keep him?
He goes,
He goes and hugs the master who like licks his face. And,
licks.
yeah.
Make sure to beat him.
Cinder, what were you doing in the meantime? You're muted.
You're good.
I'm watching this exchange with curiosity, but I'm staying quiet.
Soon
Sits
enough.
here in his arm.
Soon enough, Nexus and Lorcan come back. We need to keep him for a little bit longer.
I will take him to the market.
You know which is the corner sweet shop he talks about.
What's his name? I don't know.
Iperdruk.
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 Ifradruk. Druk. Yes. Ifradruk. Shall go to the sweet shop.
Yeah, I'll buy Daddy's favorite sweets too.
Oh, sounds great.
Okay.
You know what, Cinder, I think you'd like the sweet shop as well.
Really? I mean, really?
Aye. For a lovely dragonborn such as yourself, I'm sure there'll be some lovely spicy sweets.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
So yeah, you make your way. Nix, it would have been another hour.
But
You make your way to this corner shop. This corner shop is called Scaly Magic Sweets Emporium. The store is two floors. It is massive. It is busy, and you have all sort of magical sweets.
Oh, yes. I've not been here since for a long time. Hey, Nexus.
Next is already choosing a few, huh?
We've not been here for a long time, right?
Nope. And after my mom, she's not gonna exactly give me pocket money. He's
I was gonna
starting
say.
to pick some.
Yeah, eat now, Nexus, before you can. While you can.
Right.
Do they have a heart-shaped box of chocolates?
Do you ask one of the attendants?
Do you have a heart-shaped box of chocolates?
We have gooey melted mouth chocolate hearts, and we have exploding love hearts.
I need anything that's heart-shaped that costs less than 5 gold.
We can give you the melted mouth. The melted mouth chocolate hearts for one. She shows you a little box. There's about 5 in it.
I'll take it.
That's expensive.
Pay the man
No,
looking.
he said less than 5 gold. She's making an offer that it's 1 gold.
Ah.
Hmm?
Looking.
Isn't it?
Pay the woman. The mother of your child wants chocolate!
Not my child. Jesus.
The kid is laughing. He tugs at Cinder.
How much?
Just be careful with milk in the mouth chocolate. It means that it literally melts your mouth. It's spicy. Dad doesn't let me eat them.
They're not for me anyways. I'll take them. Larkin, pay for them.
I'll have some. Well, I'll be going around and taking like the firecrackers.
The exploding fire coals. Yeah.
Yes. Where's your favorite little lad?
He runs. It's the what was it that I called it last time?
The blue one, wasn't
Yeah, it was
it?
the.
Lightning? No.
I think it was the. It was something zap zap. I forgot the name.
It's alright.
Yeah.
Zap Zap Gumdrops.
We'll go for it. Zap zap gumdrops. And he gets it back. Oh, Daddy's favorite, and he's like, Miss, do you have any of the ones that make your nostrils smoke? And she goes, oh, of course we do. We have smoking sweets of all flavors. He goes, the wet ones.
You know smoking's bad for you.
It's for Daddy, it's not for me. And she makes a pack of them. What are you having? He looks at you, Nick.
Next, I would recommend asking for ones that don't cause any issues.
Which one? As he looks around.
Non-combustible.
Yeah, we have the. Wait a second. Well, we have the sweet no near almonds.
know that. That sounds good.
Alright, she gives you a pack. Next is like, can I have the mixes? The next selection is like the mix and everything.
Do you have chocolate covered pickles?
My one fireball sweet.
Yep.
What was that, Simba?
Chocolate covered pickles.
We don't do that. But thank you for your suggestion. We will consider it.
1 second, I really want to try this. That's not good. I'm gonna re-roll.
Oh my god, what are you doing?
Re-roll.
We are having a reroll for 18. What are you doing?
I'm slipping that firebomb into Nexus's sweets.
Nice. Alright. She goes, is that all?
That's everything, yeah.
Alright. 9 gold pieces, please. Oh, sorry. 9 gemstones, please.
Nix was confused. Very confident.
Nix, shall we get the communal pot out?
She goes, I'll pay for it for track.
It's all.
I never will.
She means she'll pay on behalf, so she gives you some, and
I see.
she'll pay for him.
Okay, I'll see.
So 9.
Is it an obsidian as well? Another one? Or you a rock?
That's in the regular pearl.
Irregular pearl, sure. She gives you a tiny gemstone, which is worth 1 gold piece. It's just a general uncut gemstone. Right. With that, do you make your way back?
Yeah, we'll start.
That would have made it an hour
Yeah.
altogether. Alright. Do you try your chocolate cinder?
No, they're not for me. I will hold on to them, but if you could send me the name of those written out in chat or something so I can put them in my inventory.
Melt in the mountains.
Thank you.
You have the exploding fire, exploding fire coals.
Yeah.
You have 1 firebomb.
Nexus has.
You have the Zap Zap gumdrops, and you have the gnome ear almonds. Do you try your sweet snakes?
Look at it, she'll examine it. Has she ever seen these before?
Nope.
She will test it.
They look like little covered almonds, like
They're worth it.
yeah, like sweet almonds.
Hmm.
You try it.
And she like takes a little bite.
So it does something to you, and you grow large gnome ears that like do they go and smoke.
She looks around alarmed. She smiles.
Well, they're sweet. They're nice.
She goes,
Nexus takes one of yours. Do you mind? And he eats it, and the same happens. Suddenly, there's a dragonborn with gnome ears, but they last about like 30 seconds. Very short.
I bet little one would like one as well.
"Those are fun. Here, if we're trapped, you want to try one?"
He goes and eats one.
She does it at the same time that he does. It's like,
Yeah, you're playing around.
You said there are 5 of those in the package?
There's 5 of the chocolate hearts. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And then you see. Let me see. So you see that Nexus takes one of his sweets. He's not really paying attention, and he goes. And suddenly you see a lightning bolt come out of one of his nostrils. He goes, "That's a fine one."
Nick stops and she looks at him. She goes, "Excuse you." She like looks at him.
You see the kid is giggling as they go and make a way back to.
I'll eat one of mine as well, but yeah.
You eat one of the when Lorcan eats one of the fire coals, you see he eats it, and suddenly you never see Lorcan change color, but all his scales go, and his face go red, smoke out of his nostrils, and then he opens his mouth, and there's like a fire dragon that comes out for like 5 seconds. And it's this.
Oh yes.
Nix is thinking of incorporating this somehow.
And then you see that Nexus 8, the lightning bolt one, is the one that the kid is eating. So, but the kid, you see the kid eats too, and comes out of both nostrils.
But the kids are more probably immune to that.
Yeah, the kid doesn't. Yeah, Nexus kind of goes, ah. But the kid seems to just be laughing. He enjoys it. So, there you go. I just was hoping that Cinder would try his.
Yeah,
Sounds like
Cinder
it.
ain't totally
Maybe like-
brain damaged.
All right.
Cinder, would you like one of mine?
No, thank you.
I'm sure.
It gives me heartburn.
It won't give you heartburn. They're just spicy.
I'll pass.
Okay.
It
Suddenly-
might trigger my labor.
Suddenly, Nexus eats another one, and I need everybody to do me a dexterity saving throw.
Stupid Nexus.
I got an awful roll.
That's awesome. 21.
Nat 1 for a 3.
I'll say that.
So what happens is Nexus takes this one and goes, "Whoa, no!" And he sneezes, and his ice comes and he freezes part of the floor, and 3 of you slip on the ice,
Nix sidesteps, she saw it coming.
and it just slip on the ice. Nobody got hurt, but you all slip on the ice.
Thanks for us. What are
You
you
go-
doing?
Oh, I don't like the ice ones. Ah,
And why do you get a mix?
I don't know. It's usually only 1 or 2. Yeah.
That was disgusting.
Compared to you, that's something.
Hey, look, there's a bit of frozen boba in it.
Hey! You see the kid is loving it. You make your way back to the house, and do you knock?
Yes.
Again, the butler comes and opens the door. It is the first time for some of you to be seeing it. And he goes, "Daddy!" And he goes, "Ifrida, come here, my little cracker.
Almost
Little what?
happily today.
My little cracker."
Oh, I really thought you said something else.
And he hugs him tight and says, "Come on, Nathan. The kind gentleman." And then he looks at the ladies.
Nah, we won't go that far. Ifrida, do you have something for your father?
"Yeah, we went to the sweet shop." And he looks, "Oh, how much do I
Oh no, it's fine.
thank you? I got your favorites."
It
"Here,
was a
here."
long
He's like,
trip,
trying to
though.
shove it into his mouth. And he goes, "No." And he takes it, and you see that his eyes widen, and this white smoke comes in the form of like giant snowflakes, but it's smoke. And he goes, "It's been a while, isn't it?" "Thank you, little one." "Ah, thank you."
Nix will, sir, I didn't, I'm so sorry for what's happened. I know that we couldn't do much for your partner, but you have a lovely boy, and as a token of my condolences, and she her hand waves over to Clamps, the master. She goes, "He's loyal, and he's taken a liking to your boy. I think it'll be a good companion for him if you're happy."
You see, Franz, "I've been riding him all the way here. He's lovely. Can we keep him?" "See, we'll keep him outside for now, until we get the ladies, of course."
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nix turns to the dog and Gnomish. Can you look after this boy? Okay? You're his now. And she hugs the dog. And she,
Oh, Master Joe.
Hmm.
And he follows them and he goes, thank you. And he goes to go back in holding a productive saying goodbye. Bye! Bye! Bye, Cinder! Bye, Nixon! Bye, Larkin! And you see that he stops and turns back to Nixus. Perhaps it would be best if you knew that there's some rumors about the arena. Akra's last opponent cheated. I don't think she's very happy.
Is that the one that was like the hospital?
Yes, it's been proven how they've cheated. They're going to have a rematch soon. But Akra's not very happy. My condolences. You won't see him because
Oh, next to each other times are inside, didn't you?
Cinder
Are you gonna
is
find
crying.
another?
Oh, he's going to meet his mother. We are not.
Nix like smart, teasing Nexus and
Nexus, you need to go meet his mother.
are you okay, Cinder? She looks at the goose crying.
I
You
miss
crying?
Fang.
He's on
Aww.
his way.
yes, yes. But you guys fed through, so
He's like,
I guess not. You should be here by tomorrow.
Cinder, I'm sure you'll see him soon. You'll be okay.
I'm sorry, my hormones are acting up.
She was generally sympathetic to him. Now she goes, okay, that's enough.
I need to see my mother. So-
Also, guys, I have been playing this. I hope you guys have understood. You have a karma card active in this town. The next town the party enters has heard of their heroic deeds. In the same anytime in the same town, they have a +5 to charisma skill checks. So you have +5 to charisma checks all over Carolina. Problem: party's too popular. Everyone notices them. You have disadvantage on stealth whilst you're in town. Which is what's been happening. Everybody is recognizing
Poor
Nexus.
Nixus.
It's fine, we can't get away from his mother anyway.
Yeah.
That's good.
So that's what's active right now, so just keep that in mind.
Well, right now, I'm letting Nexus and Nix and Cinder, if he wants to, go see his mother.
Nix smiles at them.
I would
Is it
love
time?
to.
Is it time? She's
So
like,
Larkin's not going?
Logan's going to see his own parents.
Okay. Alright, so party splits. Next is like, no, why don't we all go see Larkin's parents first?
Let's go see your mom.
Nix looks at it. She pokes him. She goes,
You guys, what, you're not curious to meet Larkin's mom?
Nix, here's the address.
she goes, think.
Cinder, he looks at Cinder. Cinder, Larkin's mom is hot.
Nix looks good.
Cinder, do you not want to see this with Nexus?
I want to
He
go
could
see
be up there,
Nexus
doesn't have
mom.
to be now.
I really want to see Nexus mom.
Go on then, lead the way.
He got a lot of splaining to do.
I'm sure your mother missed you.
Yes, she sure did.
Okay, so you guys walk back to the.
Well, I'm walking in the same sort of direction
Yeah,
anyway.
you guys all together walk back to here. Unless, are you gonna go through the market and get out closer to home?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys make your way around so you guys come out of the district, go all the way around
Sheesh.
and out this way.
Whoa, she's moving quick.
So
Nah.
right. So let's make a quick marker that this is Lorcan's house.
Hey,
And Nix's house is this one.
the big one.
So I'll put the party. Yeah, so that's next. Yep. No, yours is not that one. Yours is this one.
I drew
just
that.
mine.
And this is where everybody else is.
Just ring my house.
Yeah, I put a ring around it.
No, I was just gonna drive my face now.
Sorry.
Sheesh.
Yeah, he's like a kaiju right now.
Thank you.
That's smaller than me, nice.
Alright. So we'll start with Nexus. Everybody's excited. So Nexus he goes up to the front door, and you see that as he approached, several people that were on the streets notice him and
Turn the other way.
away. And you see the neighbors of Nexus,
Shut the
shutting the shutters. Yeah.
Closing windows, closing doors.
Yeah.
It's-
Yep. Full on closing away.
There's mothers that pick up their children and closing doors.
Cinder will
Yep.
put his/her arm around Nexus' arm, like he's escorting her.
He's like, no, let go of me. Don't give
Oh,
me more
stop
problems than I
that.
already have. He's like, don't give me more problems than I already have.
Don't be like that to your unborn child. Sorry. I'm not there.
Yeah. Lorcan's got a point.
He gets to the front door and he looks, do we have to?
Yes.
Alright, he does nothing. He knocks once. The door jerks open. And this is who you see
Ooh.
literally fly out towards him.
Uh-oh.
Actually, let me make it bigger.
Make it bigger.
I want to see. I want to see.
This is mine.
Ooh, she's hot. But why
She
are
is
her boobies
Not
crooked?
exactly. Nix, she's not exactly a dragonborn. She seems more
She has wings.
half dragon. And she flies. She ignores everyone. She flies at Nexus. No, just flies at him. Immediately knocks him out to the floor, pins him down, pulls his tail backwards, and his head and his horns in the
Locked.
locked.
Bring
He
up
goes,
the position.
yeah. He goes, where have you been? He goes, Mom, wait, like, I can't. And she lets go a little bit. He goes,
That's
okay,
the mother. That's the father of my baby. You better take your hands off him.
Nick's
You
like,
look, the first time she looks towards you, pulls tight his He wants
man,
I
I'm
order
sorry.
you to
Sorry.
stop doing that.
Finish. I'm gonna die.
I know.
see.
I know. This is reverse.
You see, as she suddenly wraps his tail under her arm, grabs the rest of the same arm she's holding him in that position. And you know Nexus is strong, and he's fighting and he can't get out. And suddenly she probes on his neck and he just stops fighting, and she lets go. And she picks up the tail and just flips him on his back on the floor, and he goes, okay. Hey, Mom. Can I explain now? He's like, where have you been? And he's like, I went to get money for the hospital bill. I paid the hospital bill, you fool. They cheated. You think they put me in hospital that easily?
You weren't. Oh, wait.
Grace and the Gargantuan got close, but not close enough.
Nick's is like, I'm sorry. She looks at Cinder, who's also.
Yeah.
Cinder is gonna walk over to where Nixus is laying and bend over and look into his eyes and say, "You lied. Your mother's not ugly."
He's lying. He's lying. He does that. No, mom, please.
Here's a gift to my mother-in-law to be. And I'll give her the chocolates.
She looks you up and down. She turns towards us.
He's not. Needs help. Help. It's magic, Mom. It's
No,
magic.
I'm trying to
Knowing-
tell him to take responsibility for his unborn child.
You see, smoke comes out of her nostril. Go inside, dear.
Yes,
Because-
of course, me.
He's about to do a breath
yeah.
attack on him.
Because knowing next, she pulls out her ceramic alchemy jug and pulls out a cup. And she goes, "Ma'am," he goes, "before you teach your son a lesson, and you should, because he has done some things, but it is true, he did go and do this on your behalf. He should have been more considerate." Looks at him. "But could I interest you in a drink? Well, before you toast him." She pours a drink of beer.
Smashes
Ah.
the cup. Then she goes to do a breath weapon and she pauses. What did you do to your scales? It's a long story.
We're treating him for that one.
Wait, who are you? What? Who are you? What are you?
Hi. What? Okay. Which one first? I'm Nix. I'm a gnome / halfling artificer alchemist at your service. Hi.
Have you got anything to do with his disappearance?
So don't blame me on that. He does what he wants. But he did mean well, because she gives like that dangerous look.
That's what he told me, too.
Very well. And do you know, have you been looking after apparently my grandchild?
Oh, ma'am, that's not real. That's just a trick.
What? That is a mean thing to
Ma'am,
say.
if you grab her hand, you see that it's an illusion.
Grab the belly, never mind the hand.
She goes.
Oh, it's time! It's time!
Goes to poke the belly and the finger goes through. And she goes,
Oh,
I need
dragons.
you to do me a dexterity saving throw.
Oh, me?
Yes. He decided to mess with his mom. Not on me.
Now I'm going to a leg then. Do it out a fucking window.
He's going
Oh, so
somewhere.
close to a nat 20.
Okay, and can you give me an acrobatics or an athletics, please?
He's getting seismic tossed.
Hey, where's the good word for Lord? Can bring it in back.
One sec, well, Cinder gets body slammed.
I dropped the illusion, too, so.
Oh, it's so wait for them.
Okay, so she reaches for you way faster than you could react.
I will
Grabs
drop.
you by the neck, spins around and just fly out the door. And you manage to roll and not smack head first into the wall on the building out.
And when I stop rolling, that's when I drop the illusion. And I stand up and I say, "Look what you've done to me!"
She looks at you. I don't fancy magic in my house.
Nix is so glad she didn't put the altar form back on.
You know, I can see where he gets his attitude problem.
Man, drink.
What is that supposed to
You
mean?
see, Nix was out another
It
card
means you've
before.
got an attitude problem, lady. And if I weren't dying already, I would put you in your place. You're very rude.
Dexterity saving throw, Peter.
No, Nick is like, note to self. buy my
Wait,
cup."
wait. Don't I get to fight back?
You can, but for now, dexterity saving throw.
Ha!
You don't want to fight back.
Okay, you
17.
dodged just as she threw the cup at your face.
Can I catch the
Oh,
cup?
No, not high enough to catch the cup.
he goes, before you do that, Lorcan will also help me bring your son home.
Oh, how's that lovely boy?
Just like I was hoping she had like a lot.
It's shit.
Because he's doing good. He went to see his parents. He should be here soon.
Good, good.
Shall we have a drink while we wait for him?
She goes and grabs Nexus by the horns and drags him. He's still not fully recovered. Drags him inside. She looks at you. No more magic in my house.
Okay, but the important thing to make note of, is that your son refused to take responsibility for his own child.
So is there a child or isn't there? She pulls and he's like, no, mom, there's no child. There's no child. There's no child.
We just dropped a child off at a new home.
That was
This is not my child, mom. There's no my child, mom.
Cinder.
He keeps saying that. Nixus, you're very disappointing. I can see why your mother's upset. I apologize, madam, for the way I spoke to you. I can understand your stress, having a son that you'll probably never see your grandchild because of him.
She.
I am trying my best to get him killed.
Yes.
We see.
You're gonna end up getting yourself killed.
Does a 19 hit Cinder?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, what? Wait a minute. You don't know that? Yeah.
Wait, the 19 hits me.
Okay, Cinder, you take 28 points of damage.
How much?
28, and you kicked out the door.
Okay.
And the door slammed in your face.
I'm sorry. But every time you tell me the amount of damage, someone else says something too, and I don't hear it.
28.
28?
28 points.
Okay.
And your door has been slammed in your face.
What did she do to just kick him?
You just do out the door. And Nex is like,
Nixon like leans over. She goes, "You're not out of the woods yet."
I'm not. You know your dad will be home soon.
Nick's foot looks up.
He's like, "Need you back again?" For now, explain what happened to your scales right now. She looks at between the two of you.
Nick looks up.
Next
Between
doesn't have
He's
political
still
sense.
he's still struggling to just catch his breath.
Nix looks between her and Nexus. She goes, "Ma'am, did you want the abridged version or the full report?"
Use simple words.
She points at the scales. That is an affliction. It is the first few signs of him turning into UNT.
You're
How-
simply good.
However, I am treating it and I've slowed it down. For now.
Very well, he's your responsibility then.
She goes, "Tell me something I don't know."
I hope you understand that if something happens to him I don't approve of, you'll be having to deal with me.
She nods.
She looks at Nexus. Where did you go and why and how and for how long and why didn't you come back?
Yeah, Nexus, where did you go? When did you come back? 2 months.
Nexus starts explaining the whole thing, the whole shebang. She's listening more patiently than you would expect. From time to time, when he says something she doesn't like, she punches him in the belly, and he takes a few minutes to recover and continue the story. It's loud enough that you can hear Cinder from outside.
It's Cinder still outside.
Yeah, she closed the door. Soon enough, she goes, "So you have to apologize to Larkin's parents, then?" Nix is like, I guess.
Why apologize to my parents?
Because she's thinking that you went after him. So it's his fault you left.
Ah.
So he pulls him by the horn
Well, it is his fault,
and start
technically.
drags him out, opens the door. Cinder, are you still there?
You out
Yep.
the way of the door? You out the way
He
of the door?
starts dragging Nexus and everybody's like staying out of it. She's just dragging Nexus all the way to Lorcan's house. And we'll get to Lorcan.
Let's get to Logan's house.
And she knocks on the door, way gentler than you think she would normally. And a lovely lady comes to open the door.
Ooh, Lorcan has a woman.
That's his mom.
Oh,
You're not
that's
seeing
sick, Lorcan.
It comes up for me, but you don't know what it is.
What's her name?
it? One second.
Might pop up on the hangout.
Is
Oh,
it
yeah.
showing now?
Yeah.
Okay. She goes, hello, Baroness. I have brought Nexus to apologize. She goes, oh, yes, we just saw Lorcan. You still know us all about it. How are you, Nexus? I've been better. She's like, come in. Oh, who are you? Oh, you must be Nick. And I assume you're Cinder. Lorcan told us all about you. Come.
This is just happening. Next is examining Cinder to see if he's got any broken ribs, contusions. He got kicked pretty hard. Like,
Oh, yeah.
are you alright? She looks at Cinder.
I'll be honest, I'm feeling a little woozy.
Okay, then come and sit here. Let me look at you. When you guys do what you she's just looking him over.
Right, soon enough, you also see a gent comes over to bring some drink to everyone. He goes, rude, big, strong hammer. Pleasure. And Lorcan's been talking to his dad. Is there anything you would have wanted to talk to them privately?
Not really. It was more to get out.
Um,
No,
Then Akra comes over to you and goes, oh, Lorcan, my boy, she gives you a title. Let's go.
Can I get a hug?
Thank you for bringing my boy back. I haven't forgiven that, though. And she punches where the tattoo is.
Ow. Thank you. Well, at least that means we're bonded together. That means you see me more.
That is true. Why aren't you, my son? You've done such a good job raising this son.
It's like
Nexus is like,
Poor Nexus.
whoa. Her son. I could use break every He looks, did you say something? He's like, no. Good mom.
you're good.
And he's like, So tell us, Baronet, hasn't he been doing a good job? Like, they start chatting, the two, on the side. Lorcan.
I'll go over to the next thing. What was it?
She gives him a look. She goes, as expected. I mean, he's still alive.
I am slightly surprised he's not worse.
She goes,
Nexus is a 3 hit point. I don't know what you're
Oh,
talking
really?
about.
Surprised he's not unconscious.
Let me
She goes,
touch him real quick.
If he wasn't for the aid, he definitely.
I
would
saved
have.
his life. Yeah, she leans over at his prone form. She's like, told you it'll be good for you. She like mimics the tonic that he took.
Like, it's gonna hurt.
Mm-hmm. It will. Yeah, when it wears off, it will really hurt. He hands him the health elixir she made that day. She goes, you might want to take this.
I'll be fine. If she sees me get better, then just be cheating a bit more.
All right. Should I wait till she knocks you out then? And she puts it away.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, but yeah, if I'm knocked out, I don't feel it.
she was smiling and he's actually seriously injured. It's like she starts to tend to him after she's done with tending to Cinder.
You see that Akra doesn't care. Akra's chatting to Beranak on the phone.
Did she keep my chocolates or did she not take them?
She took them.
Okay.
She kept them.
Well, I guess I won't feed them to
on that.
Nexus then.
She is, by the way, she is a half dragon, a red half dragon.
Nick's pours Nexus a drink.
You got the right sweets in that fight, by the way.
Next.
Ew, that'll put-
Sorry about the glasses.
And she
I'm-
takes it so she starts dabbing him like his wounds and all with gauze.
It's
Go
all
ahead, Cinder.
bruises.
Yeah. I have ointment for that. Go ahead, Cinder.
I'm just gonna keep staring at Nexus's mother.
Someone. Akra
There
is
and
the
then
mom.
Acro.
So I think that what?
I'm gonna keep staring at his mother, Nexus' mother, memorizing her features.
Uh-oh.
I know.
This is where this is going.
Acro, what happens? I mean, with
Oh,
the
yeah?
fucking-
Oh. Ugh. She does that, and she does the usual. You've seen this many times. It's when she gets angry and she can't break things. There's just these puffs of smoke that come out. She goes, "You know how Grayson and Nimblebane were my biggest rivals.
Yeah.
Biggest
Mm.
rivals. I can't get that voice down.
This is mimicking.
There was this up and coming gladiator. I don't know, kobold. It's an offense to call it right away. Kobold just used magic in the arena, but not fighting magic. They paralyzed me and just wailed on me with something that just made this black ooze. Open wounds all over.
Ah.
Took me a while to recover. Cheating. I proved it. For a while they thought it was some poison on their weapon. It was not true. I don't just stand there and let them hit me.
Sorry, what was it then? It wasn't poison?
I don't know. Some spell.
Paralysis.
I don't know about it.
Hmm.
Ask her how she recovered.
How did what did they treat you, or was it your own natural resilience?
No, they had to treat me. I couldn't even lift my warhammer for a couple days.
So sorry.
Ah.
Have they apprehended them?
They asked for a rematch.
Oh, that's right. When is the rematch?
2 days.
Do you have protection from it?
She shows you a ring.
If she had protection, Nexus wouldn't have been born.
I knew you were gonna say that. Can Nick's
They
examine?
won't do it again.
He goes, "Can I? I don't want to take. Can I just have a closer look? I'm kind of good with."
Spell reflection, that's what he said.
Oh, that's quite good.
Is it spell reflection?
That's
Okay.
what she was told.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking Nick's.
Ma'am, I just wanted to make sure that it was what it has been advertised. You don't want to risk that, do you? If you have a rematch.
They don't want to risk that. She takes it off and hands it.
Takes it. She'll examine it.
True. People don't really want to swim for her.
Yeah. She'll roll to see if it's
Yeah,
what
well,
it is, and then yeah, she might
Do you
even
have
do.
identify?
No, she's got the tech magic on her.
Mhm.
That and the Arcana check might be enough to know what it is. Ooh. And maybe guide myself too. Artificer things.
Oh, used magic. Now you're dead.
22.
We're not in her house.
That's true. Different rules.
Oh, in that case, I'm gonna heal myself.
25.
You can be 25?
25.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Fine craftsmanship. It should do what it's advertised.
Piss mouth.
Okay.
They will. I've been given leave to fight to the death.
Please don't push it that far.
They put me in hospital
Yeah, so put them in hospital, don't kill them.
permanently.
No.
Is Nick's right to say there's a ring of spell turning?
Yeah.
She's like, she hands it back. It will
They
do it.
lived in a big house.
Yeah, it'll,
This is not fault.
yeah, they're like famous fighters.
Yeah.
That's
Hordes.
why it didn't make sense to work and why he's like, oh, my mom didn't have money for the
For the treatment, so I
for the
went off.
treatment.
Now she's
He
not.
thought that. It's not
Now,
true.
yeah, because it'll definitely do the trick. Fine craftsmanship.
Right.
Well, you take. What do you have to do to make your normal again? He finally looks at you.
Yeah. Yeah, those chicken legs with those.
I like that.
Well, for now, I'm applying like a spell, like a remedy that keeps it from growing. What my research and notes indicate is that we may have to go towards the wastelands to find out how to undo it.
It'll do you some good to finally do the pilgrimage. You slap that. Okay, yeah, pilgrimage. Yeah.
Drink it, drink.
Would you like to come with us?
I have my work to do here. Plus, I'm back with his dad. I have to enjoy it while it lasts.
No.
Next is will be there.
Nyx is like she's curious. She goes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Forgive my ignorance. I don't know Dragonborn that well, but you seem to be a bit more than just looks towards monsters.
No, I am a half dragon.
I thought so.
My father was a dragon.
Looks at Nexus.
He's dragonborn more on his father's side. White dragonborn, don't ask me what I saw in him.
It was a white Dragonborn?
His dad?
That was my next question. She looks at him. That explains your cold breath.
He's like, you finally got it! He slapped him and goes, aha! Yeah, Mom, I did. Thanks.
Is Nyx right to assume that he's got both, right? He's got fire and ice.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just another spot. Late. Is he a bit of a late bloomer?
He's a late everything.
You laugh.
Dang.
Yeah, jeez. Oh, not that late. Never late for supper.
He's never late for a fight either.
Really?
He did you proud a few times. Man, I don't know if you didn't get a word in because you rightfully had to put him in his place, but he managed to save all of us by jumping into a river from hundreds of meters up and survived without a scratch.
Yeah, I would say that was scratch.
She's embellishing. She like looks at Lachlan.
That's
You
not
have
how I
been
remember
like
it.
your mother, you would have had wings.
Oh, that reminds me. We saw the Grayson Gargantuan and the Nibblebane fight.
I heard the news, hey? I was so close to defeating him once, you know.
Yeah, and Grayson is now.
Oh God, I saw. The news spread fast. I hear you had something to do with saving him. The pilgrimage continued. They've been saying everywhere. Now that I see your group, I recognize the rumors.
Oh yeah.
Saying everywhere you saved the pilgrimage of a god.
That's Pilgrimage.
Pilgrimage.
Alright.
Don't correct her, Lorcan. That's rude.
That was demons.
Demons.
Yes.
They've been appearing here too, on the outskirts, in the slums.
I have no idea what's going on. It's not good though.
There's been a few guards die recently.
That's not good. Anyone I know?
No, I don't think they were regiment ones.
Ah,
From the inner wall, when they go out to the taverns in the slums. There's been a brothel attack, though. Some
Brothel
some rumors say there's a succubus in there.
hey, Nexus. Fancy a visit to the brothel?
Huh?
I'm sorry, nothing.
Nix looks at, gives him a warning look.
I could raise a warning look.
Only to try and find out the issue.
You keep an eye on him, Lorcan.
Ah.
If you, Lorcan, did you do the pilgrimage through the wastelands?
No, I haven't yet.
Right. Just one second. She walks out. About 5 minutes later, comes back.
Is it my mother or Akra?
Okay.
She goes, he should have done it himself. And he puts the map in front of him.
Ah. Thank you.
Thank you. Nix
That's the way.
will collect them.
Nix collects the map.
Just roll
Nix
for them.
goes,
If you have this useful item in your possession, Nexus, how come you haven't used it yet?
what? He looks at Lorcan. Oh yeah, 'cause I really wanted to go on the pilgrimage by myself.
Well, why didn't you ask?
You enlisted.
Oh, I can unenlist.
You should have enlisted too, and or gone to the arena. You chose neither. You lazy bum. Anyway, then you hear a knock on the door.
Don't.
Yeah. And you hear Baronet, Lorcan's mom. Oh, it must be your darling. She goes, ha ha ha. Ready for the second round? She looks at Nexus. Nexus goes,
Oh, there we go again.
Baronet's like, he's not in my house. Never. He smiles and goes to open the door.
Pushes Nexus outside.
Whoa, we're gonna stop there. You're gonna meet Nexus's dad. He's quite important to the story. Next time.
Ooh.
So, thank you everybody for watching, for sticking
Yes,
with
thank
us.
you.
I hope everybody enjoyed the session. It was a bit of a lore drop and some funny and silly moments. I appreciate everybody's crazy ideas. I love what Cinder's been doing to Nexus. It was hilarious. I could be as mean as I wanted to be because it was to myself, so nobody was gonna cry. And everybody did great today, so thank you very much. Well, and we'll be on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night.
Speaking of dragons, there's more to come.
Yeah, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. EST for Aviar Saga. I believe there is no games this weekend. But there might be some on the server. There is
check-
definitely One Shot Sunday, right?
Yes.
Sometime.
Yep.
One Shot Sunday. I'm not sure the time.
So, well, that's okay. If you want to know the time or if you want to try and see what other games are going on our server, which there are quite a few at the moment, check our link on Discord, join our community, and thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you next week. Oh, actually, next week we're off.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
So, see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.
Alrighty. Bye, everybody. Live long,
Bye.
prosper, and
Oh,
let
yeah.
the dice.
Don't
And
be
always
soft,
roll in
Nexus
your
mom.
favor.
And pray for Nexus.
Pray for me.
And Cinder.
Yeah. Bye.